Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our public planning hearing for Monday, October 28th, 2024. We have 6 files this evening: Cedarview Industries, Allan Martin, Jaymar Manufacturing, Tammy Abbotts, Highlands Estates, and Hawthorne Cottages, and they will be in that order. So I'll call this meeting to order at 5 o'clock, and I'll ask if there's any declaration of pecuniary interest. Okay, I'm not seeing anything. Let me know if something should arise. Okay, this public meeting was called under Section 34 and Section 22 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, as amended, concerning 6 proposed zoning bylaw amendments to the Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 2004-50 and 2 proposed official plan amendments, one being an amendment to the Grey Highlands official plan and the other is an amendment to the Grey County official plan. Any person or public body is entitled to attend the public meeting and make written or oral submissions in support of or in opposition to any of the proposed amendments. Written comments should be submitted to the planning department. If a specified person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the municipality of Grey Highlands before the zoning bylaw or official plan is passed, the specified person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of council of the municipality of Grey Highlands to the Ontario Land Tribunal. And in addition, they may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. It is important to note that if you wish to be mailed a notice of the passing of the bylaw and or notice of decision, and you do not live within 120 meters of the subject property, you must provide your request in writing to the planning department of the municipality of Grey Highlands. Registering for this virtual meeting does not represent your written request. A guideline sheet is available upon request. So our first file, agenda item 3.1, is zoning bylaw amendment application number Z33 2024, affecting lands owned by Cedarview Industries Incorporated. Legal description is firstly, part lot 23, concession 5, OSPREY, as in GS 114584. Secondly, part lot 23, concession 5, OSPREY, being part 1, 16R 10805, municipality of Grey Highlands. The civic address is 349103, 4th concession B. The notice of this public meeting was mailed by standard mail on the 8th day of October 2024 to the property owner and to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject property, in addition to all agencies and persons identified in the Planning Act. At this time, council will hear presentations by the applicant or their agent, and I understand the applicant and agent are not available for this, so I'll skip down to our next item. At this time, the municipal planner will advise of any comments received and provide an overview of the purpose and effect of the bylaw. So our planner will do the applicant's presentation and ours. Planner Pasha, please.
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of the proposal, the subject property is a 40-hectare parcel of land located along the north side of 4th Concession B with the municipal address 349103 4th Concession B. The property is designated agriculture and hazard as per the Grey County and Grey Highlands official plans and is subject to the agriculture hazard and rural residential zone provisions as per the Grey Highlands zoning bylaw 2004-50. The property is a vacant lot that is mainly used for agricultural purposes. The applicant is proposing to establish a new farm cluster on the subject property, which includes a 250 square meter on-farm diversified use in the form of the manufacturing and fabrication workshop of metal products, along with a 750 square meter outdoor storage area that will be located directly southeast of the proposed OFDU. The proposed shop will be situated in an area of the property that is subject to the A1 zone provisions. A 75 square meter power room will also be attached to the proposed shop. The A1 zone does not permit on-farm diversified uses as of right on the subject property. Therefore, the applicant is proposing to rezone a portion of the subject property from agriculture A1 to rural commercial C4 437. The amendment will permit an OFDU on the subject property. In terms of the purpose and effect, the effect of this bylaw is to amend a portion of the subject lands from agriculture A1 to rural commercial with an exception C4 437. The 437 exception is an existing section in the zoning bylaw which permits the following uses: the fabrication, manufacturing, storage, and wholesale of automotive or agriculture components, a sawmill operation including the assembly, storage, and wholesale of wood furniture products, the assembly, storage, and wholesale of plastic furniture, and the construction, storage, and sale of garden sheds. In terms of comments received, Grey County planning staff have stated, that Grey County planning and ecology staff have no concerns with the subject application. Grey Sawmill Conservation Authority have stated that they find the proposal to be generally acceptable and have no concerns with the proposal. Grey Highlands Building Services have stated that Building Services has no concerns in regards to the proposed C4 metal workshop. The applicant will require, as part of the building permit submission, a building matrix along with an equipment layout, including location of gases and storage areas for chemicals or materials. All construction must conform to the Ontario Building Code and any applicable laws in place at the time of building permit submission. Grey Highlands Transportation Services have stated that a commercial pre-approval entrance permit has been issued. No other comments or concerns from TPS at this time. Grey Highlands Fire and Emergency Services, as well as Grey Highlands Environmental Services, have stated that they have no comments or concerns. And that is all.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions from council? And I can't. There we go. Okay, nothing from council. Any person present? Sorry, Mayor McQueen, are you putting your hand up there? No, okay. No. Any person present wishing to object to or support the proposed zoning bylaw amendment or have any comments or questions, please indicate and state your name and address. And you can use the raise hand feature on the phone is *9 and the raise hand feature on the computer. Anybody wishing to speak? I'm not seeing anything. Let's give it another moment. Okay, there's nobody indicating that they want to speak on this file. Council, any questions, comments? Okay. If not, this application will be forwarded to a future council meeting for further consideration. Okay, agenda item 3.2 is zoning bylaw amendment application Z34 2024, affecting lands owned by Allan and Rachel Martin. The legal description is lot 128 to 129, concession 2, NETSR, ARTEMESIA, Grey Highlands, and it has a civic address of 794-650 East Back Line. The notice of this public meeting was mailed by standard mail on the 8th day of October 2024 to the property owner and to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject property, in addition to all agencies and persons identified in the Planning Act. At this time, council will hear presentations by the applicant or their agent. Is somebody wishing to speak on this file? Okay, not seeing anybody. Who is taking this for our planner? Planner Pasha, are you going to do both of these also?
I believe Solomon Martin is the agent for this file. I see him in the attendees section.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
yes, I can.
Hello, it's Solomon Martin, and
Hi, Solomon.
I'm doing this file, I guess.
Okay, go ahead.
This proposal is a 40-hectare parcel on East Bag Line, and is to rezone a small portion of the farm to permit a small-scale on-farm diversified use on the property. This shop would be doing custom welding and metalworking, including window and door frames. This proposal would not have any noise pollution, and truck traffic would be minimal. PPS 2024 permits 2% of a farm parcel for OFD use to help support farmers and stabilize the income, meaning that 98% of the farm must stay in agriculture. PPS 2024 does not regulate farms' financial income, but it regulates the size of the uses on the farms. There is a new state-of-the-art solar system on the market, and there's a bunch of shops already on solar, and this one is thinking of switching to solar too if it works out over the winter. So that would be the main power source if it works. And that's all I have to say.
That's very interesting, the solar part. We look forward to seeing if that does work.
There's
Okay.
probably 20 shops in Grey County already on solar, so see how it works, I guess.
Great. All right. At this time, the municipal planner will advise of any comments received and provide an overview of the purpose and effect of the bylaw.
Thank you, Chair. The effect of this bylaw is to amend a portion of the subject lands from agriculture A1 to rural commercial with an exception C4 514. The 514 exception will permit the following uses: the fabrication, manufacturing, storage, and wholesale of automotive or agriculture components, a sawmill operation including the assembly, storage, and wholesale of wood furniture products, or the fabrication, manufacturing, storage, and wholesale of framing for windows and doors. In terms of comments received, Grey County planning staff has stated that they have no concerns with the subject application. Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority have reviewed the proposal and have stated that it is generally acceptable and have no concerns with the proposal. Highlands Building Services have stated that they have no concerns in regards to the proposed C4 metal workshop. The applicant will require, as part of a building permit submission, a building matrix along with an equipment layout, including the location of gases and storage areas for chemicals or materials. All construction must conform to the Ontario Building Code and any applicable laws in place at the time of building permit submission. Grey Highlands Transportation Services have stated that a commercial entrance pre-approval entrance permit has been issued. No other comments or concerns from TPS at this time. Grey Highlands Fire and Emergency Services, as well as Grey Highlands Environmental Services, have stated that they have no comments or concerns. We did receive a public comment from the neighbor. She is located directly adjacent to the subject property to the southeast. The comment is stated as the following: we are writing this email in opposition of granting approval for the zoning bylaw change for Z34 2024. We own the property besides the applicant and have several concerns. The proposed OFD will be located on East Back Line, which is a route that is often used to bypass off Highway 10. The volume traffic is already high and any more truck traffic is unsafe. The East Back Line was not built to accommodate constant truck usage. We also have an environmental concern. There will now be 3 OFDs within a kilometer of the East Back Line. The usage of fossil fuel and loud noise that accompanies these shops is a significant environmental issue. These OFDs should be grouped in an industrial park so environmental concerns can be monitored and minimized. We purchased our property in 1978 and have personally farmed the land since that date. We purchased farm, not land that is surrounded by high-tech shops that belong to in an industrial park. It is stated that farming income must be greater than the secondary OFDU. On this parcel that has no more than 50 acres and very small cattle barn, we feel that this stipulation will not occur. We feel that we have presented our concerns against the zoning being changed, Gordon and Nancy Strutt. And that is all.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions from council for our planner or the applicant's agent? Okay, not seeing anything. Any person present wishing to object to or support the proposed zoning bylaw amendment or have any comments or questions, please indicate and state your name and address. Again, raise hand feature on the computer or *9 on the phone. Is anybody wishing to speak? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody from the public wanting to speak. Any last comments? Council? Okay. There's no further discussion. This application will be forwarded to a future council meeting for further consideration. Okay, agenda item 3.3 is zoning bylaw amendment application number Z35 2024, Jesse Martin, affecting lands owned by Jaymar Manufacturing Limited. The legal description is lot 25, concession 7, Osprey, except R419249, ST GS 72945, Grey Highlands, and it has a civic address of 409-197 Grey Road 4. The notice of this public meeting was mailed by standard mail on the 8th day of October 2024 to the property owner and to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject property, in addition to all agencies and persons identified in the Planning Act. At this time, council will hear presentations by the applicant or their agent. And Solomon, are you up again?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hey, this proposal is on a 20-hectare parcel on Grey Road 4, east of Maxwell, and is to rezone a small portion of the farm to permit a small-scale OFDU on the property. The shop, again, would be doing custom welding and metalworking, and truck traffic would be minimal, and the shop is closed on weekends and statutory holidays. And as for the power, again, solar, see how that works out. That's all I have to say.
Okay. And at this time, the municipal planner will advise of any comments received and provide an overview of the purpose and effect of the bylaw. Planner Pasha.
Thank you, Chair. The effect of this bylaw is to amend a portion of the subject lands from agriculture, A1, to rural commercial with an exception, C4511. The 511 exception will permit the following uses and provisions. The fabrication, manufacturing, storage, and wholesale of automotive and agriculture components, a sawmill operation including the assembly, storage, and wholesale of wood furniture products, the assembly, storage, and wholesale of plastic furniture, the construction, storage, and sale of garden sheds, and notwithstanding the interior side yard requirement of 15 meters in section 8.4.2 of the zoning bylaw, an interior side yard setback of 12 meters shall be permitted. In terms of comments received, Grey County planning staff have stated that they have no concerns with the subject application. Grey Solid Conservation Authority have stated that they find the proposal to be generally acceptable and have no concerns with the proposal. Building Services have stated that they have no concerns in regards to the OFDU metal working shop. The applicant is to be advised that as part of the building permit process, a building matrix along with the proposed equipment layout will be required. Construction to conform to the requirements of the Ontario Building Code and all applicable law in place at the time of permit submission. Grey Highlands Transportation Services, Fire and Emergency Services, as well as Environmental Services have all stated that they have no concerns with the proposal. And that is all.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the agent or our planner from members of council? Okay. Any person present wishing to object to or support the proposed zoning bylaw amendment or have any comments or questions, please indicate and state your name and address. And again, the raise hand feature on a computer or *9 on a phone. Is anybody wishing to speak to this file? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody. Any last comments, questions? Members of council? No. So as there's no further discussion, this application will be forwarded to a future council meeting for further consideration. Thank you, Solomon.
Thank you.
Okay, agenda item 3.4 is zoning bylaw amendment application number Z37 2024, affecting lands owned by Tammy, Alice, Margaret Abbotts. The legal description is part lot 34, concession 9, OSPREY, part 2, 16R 9752, Grey Highlands, County of Grey. And there is no civic address assigned to this property. The notice of this public meeting was mailed by standard mail on the 8th day of October 2024 to the property owner and to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject property, in addition to all agencies and persons identified in the Planning Act. At this time, council will hear presentations by the applicant or their agent. There's somebody representing this file. I see Kristine Loft. If we could move Kristine over, please. There we go.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Yes, late afternoon. Good afternoon, Kristine Loft, and I'm representing the landowner, Tammy Abbotts. So this is a proposed zoning bylaw which implements consent file B19 2024. The consent application was heard by the Committee of Adjustment in early October and was approved. And one of the conditions is that an implementing zoning bylaw amendment be passed. The consent application was for a lot addition. It proposed to sever 17.3 hectares from the subject lands, which you're correct, it does not have a civic address, and to convey those lands to the parcel to the west, which it does have an address of 4295698 8th concession B, and to retain then a smaller rural residential lot that would have direct frontage on 8th concession B. Amalgamated parcel has a lot area of 36.7 hectares. These parcels do, both the amalgamated as well as the retained, have limited frontage, which does not meet the requirements of the zoning bylaw. So the request for the zoning bylaw amendment is to recognize the lot frontages of each of those parcels. The consent application was based on a draft reference plan. So the amalgamated parcel would have a frontage of 66 meters and the retained parcel of 69 meters. I do note staff has given me a little bit of wiggle room on that, I believe, and has noted a minimum requirement of 60 meters, which is helpful just in the case that the survey comes in a little off. So those are my comments. This is implementing, a consent for lot addition, and there were no issues before the committee of adjustment. Those are my comments.
Okay, thank you. So I'll go to our municipal planner now, who will advise of any comments received and provide an overview of the purpose and effect of the bylaw. Planner Pasha.
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of the overview, purpose, and effect, the effect of this bylaw is to amend Schedule A of the zoning bylaw 2004-50 by rezoning the subject lands from rural RU 248 wetland and hazard to rural RU 513 rural residential RUR 512 and wetland and hazard. So it states, notwithstanding any provision of the zoning bylaw 2004-50, to the contrary, the following provisions, in addition to any other provisions pertaining to the rural residential zone, shall apply to those lands zoned rural residential RUR 512. The lot frontage shall be a minimum of 60 meters. And then there's a second provision in this, notwithstanding any provision of the zoning bylaw 2004-50, to the contrary, the following provisions, in addition to any other provisions pertaining to the rural zone, shall apply to those lands zoned rural residential rural RU 513. Lot frontage shall be a minimum of 60 meters. In terms of comments received, Grey County Planning staff have stated that they have no concerns. County Planning staff have no concerns with the subject application. The county requests notice of any decision rendered with respect to this file. Grey Sauble Conservation Authority has stated that they have no concerns with the subject application. Grey Highlands Building Services have stated that they have no concerns in regards to this application. Grey Highlands Environmental Services have also stated similarly that they have no concerns with the subject application. Lastly, Grey Highlands Transportation Services have stated that the applicant will be required to obtain a pre-approval residential entrance permit for the vacant lot. And that is all.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from members of council for our planner or the applicant's agent? Okay, not seeing anything. I'll go to the public. Any person present wishing to object to or support the proposed zoning bylaw amendment or have any comments or questions, please indicate and state your name and address. And again, raise hand feature on the computer and *9 on the phone. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody indicating that they wish to speak. Last comments from council? No. Okay, as there's no further discussion, this application will be forwarded to a future council meeting for further consideration. Thank you, Kristine.
Thank you.
Agenda item 3.5 is zoning bylaw amendment application number Z26 2024 Highland Estates BCom Incorporated and County Official Plan Amendment number OPA 22. It's affecting lands owned by Caitlin McConnell and Lauren Jerome Nagy. Legal description, part lot 22, concession 7, Euphrasia, part 1, 16R 3646, Grey Highlands. It has a civic address of 466 615 12th concession B. The notice of this public meeting was mailed by standard mail on the 8th day of October 2024 to the property owner and to all property owners within 240 meters of the subject property, in addition to all agencies and persons identified in the Planning Act. At this time, council will hear presentations by the applicant or their agent. Do we have somebody representing this file that would like to speak? Oh, Kristine again. Okay. We should have kept her over, I guess. Sorry, Kristine, I didn't realize you were doing this one too.
Thank you. So I did provide a PowerPoint presentation. I'm wondering if staff can present that.
My apologies. I'm just waiting for the email to come through. I didn't know there was 2 presentations on this file, so I only had one prepared. It'll just take a moment.
Sure. So I'll maybe just start, Chair Allan, just with my first opening. Good, thank you. So good evening. My name is Kristine Loft with Loft Planning Inc., and I'm representing the landowner BCom Inc. Listening tonight on this call are the landowners, as well as the technical consultants that worked on the submission. And following tonight's meeting, we will provide a response submission to the comments that we both hear tonight, as well as a response to all of the comments, both departments and agencies, and the ratepayer comments that have been received by the municipality and the county to date. And just to let anyone listening that both the county and municipal staff have been forwarding me the comments as they've been received. So we have all had a chance to review them. And so we do look forward to sort of providing a response submission following tonight's meeting. There were certainly a lot of, we thought, good comments and some, thoughtful input. So we do look forward to being able to provide a wholesome response following the meeting tonight.
Okay.
So I'll just start, and hopefully the PowerPoint will come up momentarily. So the address is 46615 12th Concession B in Grey Highlands. The lands are rectangular shape and located on the north side of the 12th Concession B. The property has a lot area of just over 40 hectares and a lot frontage of 343 meters. The site has an existing dwelling and accessory structures. With respect to surrounding land uses, to the north are woodlands and agricultural lands. To the east, woodlands and rural residential properties. To the south is residences associated with Lake Eugenia and woodland areas. And to the west are woodland and rural residential areas. I would highlight that the lands are regulated by the Conservation Authority. If staff are having trouble, I do have it available that I could present.
Sure, if you want to share your screen.
Is that work?
My apologies, the permissioning is not letting me open it.
Okay. Oh yeah, okay. Okay, just one moment.
There we go.
Are we good?
Yeah.
Okay, and I think this will let me slideshow. Okay, so the subject lands. In terms of, I just have a few slides showing some photographs. So this is a slide showing the main entrance to the site and the existing residence just off to the left behind the tree. This entrance has a width of 5 meters. There is also a smaller entrance just located to the west of this main entrance. This is one of the accessory structures throughout the presentation tonight, but as well as the technical reports that have been submitted. This structure is referred to as the hall, and the building is 125 square meters, or just over 1,300 square feet in size. And it would be considered to have a 100-person maximum capacity. And the intent of the applications is to utilize this structure for special events. is the accessory structure that is referred to as the hangar. Again, tonight, as well as throughout the technical study, the structure has an area of approximately 70 square meters or 750 square feet. And the intent of these applications is to utilize this structure for special events in terms of outdoor space and utilizing this structure within this area. And this is the existing dwelling, as well as an existing fire pit area. And I would just note that the existing zoning on the site identifies that a health spa is permitted on the site, and historically has been within this building. So just walking through the property, I have utilized the Capes Engineering drawing. I'm really just going to focus on sort of what's highlighted tonight. But if anyone listening is wanting to review this plan closer, it's within the Capes Engineering documentation. So this is a conceptual overview, the area identified at the front portion of the property. So I just note that the request for the zoning bylaw amendment is only related to this front area and not the entirety of the property. So we will see momentarily sort of where this location is, but it is the front, basically the front of the property. So starting at the front lot line, you can see the main entrance into the property, and you can also see the smaller entrance located to the west. From the main entrance in, you can see the existing dwelling, which is on just left of the laneway. And continuing on then in yellow, there is a small parking area located just in from the entrance. You can then see the hall, which is identified in orange. There's a pool, which sorry, I didn't show a photo of that, but there is a pool located just east of the hall. And then traveling along the laneway, there's a second parking area, and I've labeled it as the cabin and tent area. So it's proposed that this would be where any guest accommodation in terms of cabins and tents are located. And then further along, you can see another parking area in yellow, and then you can see the hangar reference, which is in red. And the dashed blue line, it represents the 30-meter setback from the wetland zone. So it's labeled as the 30-meter wetland protection zone. So the proposed parking and uses in any type of structure or site works is outside of that 30-meter setback line. A proposed County of Grey official plan has been required. And so the purpose of the County of Grey official plan amendment is to amend Schedule A, the land use designation map 2 of the County of Grey official plan, and to change the designation of the subject lands shown on Schedule A from the rural designation to the rural site specific designation. And it would ultimately have a section B54.1.4 and then an exception number. And this site-specific policy will permit an additional permitted use, being an event venue. The proposed zoning bylaw that's been applied for, the purpose of the zoning bylaw amendment is to rezone a portion of the lands to permit and regulate a special events venue and related overnight accommodation, including the use of the existing residence, cabins, and tent sites on the subject lands. And the effect would be to rezone the lands from currently a rural RU 043 zone, as well as wetland and hazard, to a rural RU site-specific exception, a straight rural zone, and of course the wetland and the hazard zones would remain unchanged. So one difference I think that this amendment brings is that it actually locates any permissions to only the area that's hatched on the Schedule A before you. And so the new exception will permit and regulate a special events venue and related overnight accommodation. And there's also a request to lift the holding symbol on a portion of the subject lands, which the environmental impact study that's been submitted has supported. With respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. On the previous slide, I said permit and regulate. So there are a number of sections within the draft zoning bylaw. And the first one would be that a definition of special events is added to the bylaw. So the definition proposed is special events shall include the holding of an assembly of persons for the purpose of health and wellness retreats, educational events, corporate or business retreats, weddings, and other similar gatherings. And with respect to the special events, there's a number of special provisions. Number one is that there's a maximum number of guests per event of 95 that would be on site. Events to be held all year, January 1 to December 31st. Hours of operation until 11:30 p.m. on Friday and Saturday, and until 10 p.m. on weekdays and Sundays. And parking spaces to be provided is 41 for the special events portion. So I would just note two items, that the parking spaces identified on here is 41, which is for the hall and the hangar with a special events use, but an overall total of 56 parking spaces would be provided on site within the 3 parking areas. And within the planning report, there is a zoning section which identifies the parking requirements broken down into the different uses on the site. And on this slide, with respect to the hours, we have ultimately had many discussions with staff since the initial submission. And so there has been requested change to the hours of operation, which would ultimately be lesser hours. And so we will provide that in writing with our response to this public meeting. So I just wanted to highlight that, because if anyone's reading along in the technical submission, there is certainly a change between these hours and the hours originally proposed. So just to confirm with council that these are lesser hours than what were originally applied for. And a second part of the draft zoning bylaw will be the related accommodation. So I would just confirm that this is related accommodation. It's not, it would only be guests of an event that would be coming on site, and not sort of having multiple, events and then separate guests only related to the guest accommodation. So the related accommodation on the property would be within the single detached dwelling. The proposal is for 5 cabins, 7 tent sites, and the guest accommodation, which would be within the dwelling, to a maximum of 14 persons. So just a bit of an overview, the proposed venue and accommodation would be a maximum of 95 guests on site at any given time, that the area would be limited to only the area zoned at the front portion of the property, and that the existing permissions on the site, which we are proposing to maintain, include a health spa, 4 trailer sites, and use of the dwelling. And so this is a bit of a reiteration, but just the current zoning on the site does include a site-specific exception. And as I noted, it's on the entirety of the site. So this proposed amendment would basically delete the exception on the back portion of the property and anywhere outside of the hatched area that we're proposing now. An environmental impact study was completed, and there have been site visits between Berks and the Conservation Authority, as well as county staff. The environmental impact study established the natural heritage features on site. It included the wetland staking, establishment of the significant woodlands or consideration of, as well as SAR habitat. It also reviewed a proposed septic system area to ensure no impacts on the natural heritage features. And it provided trail maintenance provisions to be implemented and general operations and mitigation measures to be implemented. And ultimately, the EIS was the first report to be completed in order to establish the envelope for the proposed use. So to identify the mapping and the setbacks which, you know, one of the plans from the report are on the screen. And the servicing for the site, Capes Engineering prepared a servicing brief. And so that currently there are several systems on the site, which are older septic systems. So the proposal would be to decommission all 3 of the existing septic systems, including the septic systems, as well as a holding tank that currently services the hall, and to install a single 18,800 liter septic tank, install a new class 4 tertiary treatment system, which would be similar to, or would be a Waterloo biofilter system or equivalent, install sanitary drainage lines from the camp area, house and hall to the new septic system, to install a pump chamber to lift the sewage from the tank into the septic system, and that the bed is to be located outside of the 30-meter wetland area. And on this screen is the purple area, which has been identified in the servicing plan as sort of the general area where that system would be located. So, of course, detailed design needs to take place, and so this is high-level functional servicing, but does provide an area within the zoned area that would be a general size for a septic system moving forward. A noise assessment was completed by Northern Applied Sciences. The predictive noise modeling evaluated the impacts of amplified sound from the hangar and the hall, and other activities at the site may generate noise, are best controlled through policy and management practices. Based on the land use characteristics of the area surrounding the site, the provincial MPC 300 sound level limits for class 3, which is the rural area, and our most stringent, were considered to be appropriate. The noise impact contours were prepared to show the maximum community impacts in all directions, and the results from the modeling of noise impacts associated with the amplified sound from each area are summarized in the report. The noise, so the noise assessment, the hangar and the hall are multi-purpose buildings that are equipped for hosting events that include amplified noise, and they contain sound systems which are dominant noise sources. So the hangar is a 16-foot high wood and sheet metal structure with south-facing rolling doors. The hangar's maximum noise impacts at the receptors occur when the amplified music is played with the roll-out doors open. And the hall is a 23-foot high structure that can be used year-round, has overhead doors along the north and the east side, and the hall is equipped to provide amplified music, having its speaker system facing north and away from the receptors. A key noise control maximum allowable limit for the volume of the sound system in decibels identified for the hall and the hangar. The site will directly measure the speaker volumes at a reference distance using a sound level monitor, and source-specific volume limits are a commonly used best practice to manage noise from the amplified sources. And this is the, actually, I'll just go back one. I'm sorry. So the noise assessment did conclude that an administrative policy and management plan will need to be implemented. The administrative policy should provide clear limitations on noise from the camp area, particularly nighttime disturbances, provide clear limitations on outdoor activities, for example, no fireworks, no radios at night, identify the limiting hours of activities, and identify the hangar and hall noise limits. And this policy should provide clear direction on who is ultimately responsible for addressing and reporting issues, and ultimately to have actionable and meaningful enforcement mechanisms, and that these be periodically reviewed by the owners in conjunction with the noise consultants to determine the overall effectiveness and if any improvements are needed. And lastly, the report concluded that the operation can comply both with the MPC 300 noise requirements for a rural area and the noise bylaw requirements. And I would just note that the county did have the noise report peer reviewed, and I'm sure you'll hear those findings from staff. But ultimately, we can agree and conclude, and we agree with the peer review. And I had a call this morning with the noise specialist, and certainly he's pleased with the peer review, and that any comments received as part of that can be implemented as we move forward. Other considerations with respect to traffic and traffic movements, the areas proposed for use are already cleared openings, and there is existing zoning on the lands for commercial uses. Traffic impacts are anticipated to be minimal. There is proposed parking on site, and it's also anticipated that the guests will be encouraged to utilize centralized drop-offs in larger vehicles to avoid extensive parking on the site during an event, and that the use of shuttles also limits traffic numbers, limits parking, and ultimately vehicle movements. Traffic impact study was not required as part of our as it was felt that the road network was reasonable and serviceable. With respect to refuse, the refuse will be stored appropriately covered on site in designated areas, protected from the elements, and would ultimately be removed from the site through private collection. And an operational agreement would need to be prepared and provided to and mutually signed with any organizers or renters of the property, so that they clearly understand the rules and the limitations. And this is fairly clear in the noise report of what would be required to be included within that agreement. On behalf, this is my last slide, on behalf of the owners of BCOM Inc. and the technical consultants, we do commit to providing a technical response to the department and the agency comments received, the noise peer review received, and all of the ratepayer comments received either in writing prior to or verbally at tonight's meeting. The owners do wish to establish and operate a successful and a meaningful business that benefits the municipality and the county. And it is our opinion, and based on the technical works completed, that the proposed event venue and the limited overnight accommodation can operate while complying with the relevant regulatory requirements, that noise can be effectively managed through the use of a management plan that is actionable and meaningful and includes enforcement mechanisms for the guests on site. And those are my comments. Thank you, through the chair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, the county planner will advise of any comments received and provide an overview of the purpose and effect of the bylaw for the county official plan amendment. And we have Planner Hillier, I believe. We could move the county planner over.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
There we go. Yes, we can.
Okay, wonderful. So I've just been told to share my screen here, so I'm going to try to do that. Okay. Can everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Oh, I think I'm sharing the wrong one here. Hold on one sec. Or maybe that was the right one.
It's confusing, Becky, when you
if I share this one, can you guys see the next slide or the current slide?
both.
Okay, sorry about that. Just hold on one sec. It's giving me mixed messages here. Okay, there we go. I think that's the one we want.
Now
Okay,
it's
perfect.
working.
Sorry about that. Okay, yes, so I'm just going to walk us through the official plan amendment portion of this application, and that will include a discussion of the comments we have received on the file to date. If it's okay with the chair, that kind of comes towards the end of the presentation, but I just wanted to kind of go over some of the basic premise of the county official plan amendment portion, which Kristine has already done a wonderful job explaining.
Okay.
Okay. So just to provide a bit of background, as Kristine mentioned, the application has been submitted by BCom Inc. Through Kristine Loft for a county official plan amendment. The county official plan amendment is specifically for establishing the special event venue for hosting weddings and health retreats for up to 95 guests at a time. As Kristine noted, the property itself is about 40.5 hectares in size, roughly about 100 acres. It currently features a number of structures, including a single residential dwelling, a short-term accommodation structure, and accessory structures. The accessory structures include a historic hangar and a hall structure that would accommodate events. The lands are locally known as 46615 12th Concession B. And surrounding land uses include forests, provincially significant wetlands, and some smaller rural residential parcels to the immediate west and south. And I would note that Grey Highlands has also recently approved a 10-unit glamping facility on a site directly south of the subject property. So in terms of the relevant county official plan amendment policies, so this property currently is designated rural, hazard lands, and provincially significant wetlands in Schedule A of the county's official plan. It's also designated core area in Schedule C and features significant woodlands, various water features, and unevaluated wetlands in Appendix B. So I would just note that from the kind of core area perspective, these are areas that are kind of considered to be the largest, most contiguous areas of natural features throughout the county. And we consider them to be one of the most important areas from an ecological perspective and habitat function perspective. So yeah, just noting that, and I'll show you a map of that in a moment. The event buildings themselves would be located within the adjacent lands of those features, but not within the features themselves. So as Kristine showed, there is kind of that small cleared area at the south of the property where all of those structures and development would be located, and it's outside of those features. So along with the county official plan amendment, a zoning bylaw amendment has also been submitted to Grey Highlands, which you'll probably hear a bit about from Andy in a few minutes. So the zoning proposal in brief would be to amend that rural exception zone, which currently permits the health spa, to permit the proposed special event use and overnight guest accommodations, including a maximum of 5 guest cabins, 7 tent sites, accommodation for up to 14 guests, and a total of 41 parking spaces. So in terms of the rationale for the county official plan amendment, in terms of why are we looking for that and not just a zoning bylaw amendment here, when we were having a review of kind of the development that was before us and looking at our policies, there was kind of the thought here that this use might be slightly above and beyond what we would normally consider as kind of a standard allowed use within the rural designation of the county's official plan. And so we wanted to just ensure kind of for consistency going forward that we're applying a bit of an additional test to some of these proposals, just recognizing that there is that potential for additional noise considerations, additional traffic and servicing, and potential impact to neighbors. And so we did kind of put that additional test layer just to ensure that alignment does exist between the provincial planning statement and the Planning Act. So this is a photo of the subject land. So as you can see, it is a largely forested property, but towards the south, there is a more cleared area of land, which is where the focus of the development would be. So that hatched area is roughly the area that would be subject to the county's official plan amendment, and that's where that site-specific rural designation would be. So in the left-hand image there, that kind of turquoise mapping, that is showing the county's core area mapping. So again, the proposed developed area is outside of that. But because of the ecological importance of that mapping, of that mapped area, we really wanted to make sure that any use that does occur here is going to be sensitive to those environmental features that are largely surrounding the area. And so we did request at the beginning that that environmental impact study be completed. So in terms of the supporting work that has been done, the applicants have submitted a planning justification report that speaks to the county official plan amendment as well as the zoning bylaw amendment. A servicing study has been completed, a noise study, including that recent peer review that Kristine mentioned, as well as an environmental impact study. So in terms of where we are at the moment from a development process kind of perspective, so planning processes are not super straightforward, and there's often some kind of twists and turns in the process. But essentially, we're at the public meeting stage at the moment, so we've kind of gone through an initial review. A zoning bylaw amendment was originally submitted to Grey Highlands, but with further conversation with county staff, we kind of determined that we would be looking for that additional level of review through the county official plan amendment. And so the applicants did submit that a county official plan amendment. We jointly circulated both applications. We requested comments from neighbors as well as agencies, which many probably on the call today did submit some comments, which is great to have that feedback. Today, we are looking forward to hearing everybody else's thoughts on this development. And then, as Kristine noted, there'll be a period where refinements are made to that application based on the comments that we hear today, the comments that have already been received, as well. You'll still have the opportunity to provide additional written comments if you do choose to do so. Following some amendments to the applications, the ideal sort of chain of events would be county staff would bring forward a recommendation for county council, and Grey County would make a decision on the official plan amendment portion. And then that would be followed by Grey Highlands making a decision on the zoning bylaw amendment. It's my understanding once the official plan and the zoning bylaw amendment, if they are to be in place, Grey Highlands would also be looking at a site plan control process, which would really figure out kind of that detailed design and the nitty-gritty configuration of the site. So in terms of the subject property itself, so I did a site visit a couple of weeks ago. We've got the main dwelling there in the top left. The kind of middle picture there is showing some of the tent or yurt structures and how those would look in the camping area. There is a small short-term accommodation unit at the bottom there. On the top right, that is the pond that exists on the property. I understand it is partially located within the significant wetlands area, but I believe the pond itself is human-made. So I don't believe it was deemed to be entirely within the provincially significant wetland. On the picture on the left there shows kind of the wedding ceremony space in the trees, and the bottom picture is the hall space. And then the picture on the left here. So as Kristine noted, there is a historic hangar, and along with the historic hangar is a historic runway use there. And so it's kind of this open lawn area that I understand is compacted with gravel underneath. And I believe that's a portion of the parking area that they're looking to have, as well as on the right there, they've got that centralized paved parking space. So this has been a very interesting application to review, and I think it really tests kind of the various public interest policies of the Planning Act. So I've highlighted a few of the important ones. So the Planning Act puts forward a number of key items that as planners, we really try to ensure that we're recommending decisions that take account of all of these different elements. So I think the important ones here are making sure that we really consider and protect ecological systems, including natural areas, features, and functions. But then if we go down to subsection H, we also need to ensure that we are providing adequate provision and distribution of social, cultural, and recreational facilities, as well as the adequate provision of employment opportunities. And generally, we need to be ensuring that we're directing development to appropriate places. And so all of those things together make quite an interesting case study and potential route forward for this development. So we have received a number of comments for this file. So this is kind of my summary as of Friday afternoon around 2 p.m., but we did receive a few more over the weekend and today. But as of Friday, we had received comments from about 15 households that opposed or raised concerns about the proposed development. Of those, all or most were neighbors on surrounding lands that would potentially be impacted. Some households did provide multiple emails or letters, as well as 9 letters were received in support of the proposed development. 6 of those were from local or regional businesses, 2 were from friends or supporters of the applicant, and 1 was from a community organization. There was 1 neutral public comment, which is ask questions only, as well as 2 agency comments, including Grace Harbor Conservation Authority and Enbridge Gas. So my apologies in advance. This is going to be a bit of a lengthier section just to kind of go over some of the core comments that we received. So the first category was in regards to noise. So this was really the main concern that we heard echoed through a lot of the comments. There were concerns about the impact of noise on the general quality of life for people living in the area and kind of the mental health of local residents. There were concerns about the impact of noise on wildlife habitat. Several comments recommended that no exemption to the noise bylaw be granted. The comments noted the late hours and frequency of noisy events as a significant concern. Neighboring properties had concerns that their recently constructed residence was not included as a sensitive receptor within the noise study. There was a question of who would monitor and enforce noise on site. There was a concern about the permanence of a zoning decision. For example, even if the current owners did choose to be respectful, what about future owners? There was noting that families and children do live in the neighborhood and late noise would not be appropriate. There were a couple of comments that raised some fairly technical questions for the noise study. I won't go over those, but I just wanted to note that I have noted them, and I'll ensure that they're passed on to the applicant, and hopefully the noise consultant can maybe take a look at some of those as well. There was kind of some concerns about the actual event use itself. There was a question of whether there's a need for more wedding venues in the area, suggesting there may already be enough. There was kind of a recommendation put forward in one of the comments that maybe it would be appropriate to cap the maximum of people to 50 guests at a time, 3 weddings or concerts per year, and a noise bylaw exemption only for those occasions with clear consequences for infractions. There were concerns about existing illegal structures and past use on the site. How will these brought up to code and who will monitor that process? There were concerns about the potential for declining property values for surrounding residents. Concerns about the cumulative impact of this use in combination with the approved 10-unit glamping facility across the road. There was general support for the health spa zoning use, but felt that the current special event proposal was excessive with kind of the noise and traffic that would go along with it. There was concerns that the increased taxes and economic benefits of the use may be superseded by the amount of taxpayer dollars going into enforcement issues. And there was a question of whether the proposal really meets the intention of being a resource-based recreational use. Are weddings recreational uses, and are they really compatible with natural resources? There were just some comments about the general layout of the site. Neighboring properties had concerns about the trespassing of guests using trail systems on the lands, as well as liability considerations if someone were to get hurt on their properties. Concern that the camping area is located very close to neighboring houses. There was a question of where the proposed cabins would be located, which were not shown on the submitted site plan. And one neighbor did note that an existing yurt structure encroaches onto their property, but I do believe that issue may have been recently addressed. Regarding site servicing, some comments noted that there are existing septic systems built in the 60s and 70s, but they cannot handle additional servicing demand of extra short-term rental accommodations. There were concerns about contamination of water table, noting that surrounding residential users rely on well water. There was concerns about the impact of carrying capacity for Lake Eugenia and its headwaters, which I understand is an ongoing concern in the area. Some comments did not support the use of portable toilets, which I understand are proposed for 3 years, after which a fulsome septic system would be installed. There was a question of what trigger would be in place for the septic system to be constructed in 3 years' time. Questions and concerns about waste collection, how will this happen, and the potential for excess garbage around the site. There was a concern about decommissioning of the current sewage holding tank and how that can be safely done, and the combined servicing impact of, again, the glamping facility across the road. There were some general concerns about traffic, noting that there are already a number of vehicles using the 12th Concession B road, and concerns about an extra 41 vehicles entering and exiting the site. There were questions about traffic flow and stacking on the site itself, and where vehicles will park. There were concerns about impact of traffic on the safety of other road users, including pedestrians and cyclists. Some comments noted that there had been several near misses or accidents in the area, as well as concerns about drinking and driving after events for guests not staying on the site, noting that there's very limited transportation options in Eugenia. Okay, we're almost getting through the concerns. Impact to nature, again, was another general concern raised. Destruction of the wooded areas, particularly kind of around that outdoor ceremony area, and the work that was already done to put up some of those structures in terms of tree removal in those areas. Concerns about proximity to the provincially significant wetlands and the potential water contamination concerns. Impact, again, of noise on the surrounding wildlife habitats. There was a question of, even if the owners intend to respect nature in the area, all guests might not have the same sense of respect and value for nature. Concern that there could be an increase in accidental fires, and who will be monitoring and enforcing rules around guest behavior. Some very general comments, concerns about past bylaw infringements on the site and whether applicants should be given another chance. Concern that additional enforcement by Grey Highlands bylaw staff or police might outweigh potential economic benefits for the area. There was a question as if this application is refused, can the owner submit another application? And again, just the general monitoring of noise and guest activities was a big question. So as noted, there were also a number of supportive comments received, and I did want to take some time to go over those as well, because I think that they're an important lens for this discussion as well. Some comments noted that the development would contribute to local economy, jobs, and they would support local businesses, including restaurants, shops, and services for visitors. The approval of this development would be supporting a female entrepreneur who is living with a chronic health condition, and I understand she has been quite open with that. Proposal would garner local partnerships with community groups such as Living Better with Parkinson's, as well as collaboration with small businesses. For example, lessons on local herbs and plants and on-site massages. There would be the opportunity for increased tourism and visibility for the area. There's a suggestion that it would balance economic development with environmental stewardship, noting that there is really a business demand for eco-retreats and rural venues that offer a variety of services and functions. And noting that while the focus of the business is on health retreats, the hosting of slightly larger weddings or reunions would keep the business model sustainable financially. There were also comments noting in support of the natural environment in the area. Specifically, comments supported the owner's commitment to a sustainable business that complements the natural surrounding. Noting that the use would allow people to be really immersed in nature, which includes that additional overnight accommodation piece. Comments noting that the owner has a renewed commitment to ensuring it does remain a peaceful space for everyone living within the area. A comment noting that people are looking for luxury experiences that can also allow them to be connected with nature. A comment noting that the owner has developed on-site gardens, including lavender and herb gardens that add value to guest experiences and for wildlife. An individual who noted in their comment lives with generalized anxiety disorder, noted how places like Highlands Estate provide a unique opportunity to connect with nature in a peaceful environment, and noting the owner's dedication to preserving nature aligns with Grey Highlands values. Some other general comments. One commenter knows the owner personally, knows she is really committed to protecting the wetlands, believes it would be a beautiful site to support others who are experiencing neurological diseases living within the community. Living Better with Parkinson's intends to partner with Highlands Estates to provide educational fitness and retreat opportunities to people living with Parkinson's disease and their families. And the owner is particularly well positioned to create a wellness environment given her own health and experience of illness. So those were the extent of the public comments provided. Again, there were a few more that came over the weekend, but I did have a quick look through them, and I think that they can generally be summarized within those. But yeah, my apologies if anyone felt I glazed over anything there, but just wanted to kind of summarize as best as we can within the time limits we have. We also did receive a comment from Grey Sauble Conservation Authority. GSCA had no objections to the proposal. A development permit would be required. They noted for the single family dwelling and pool, which we might need to check with them. I'm not sure if they maybe meant the hall structure, but we can double check on that. And noting that one of the existing tent platforms will need to be relocated outside of the wetland hazard. So again, in terms of next steps, the applicants will be looking to revise some of those comments, revise some of the material and address some of the comments that have been put forward. And once we kind of have received that new submission, planning staff, both at the county and the municipal level, will work together towards kind of a bit of if we can, kind of a joint process to move forward, hopefully kind of on the same terms of where we want to go and where we see this one going. But it would be the county ideally making a decision on the official plan amendment first, followed by Grey Highlands Council on the zoning portion. And that is everything I have tonight.
Okay. So now our municipal planner, Manager Payne, I'm not sure that we need an overview of the purpose and effect. I think we perhaps have had that. And so maybe just comments received for the actual zoning part. But if there's something that you feel needs to be said, then go ahead.
Okay. I do feel that there's something that needs to be said here. Becky had mentioned that there were a couple of buildings on site that were illegally constructed. And so in the interest of all of council having the same information and the public being privy to the same information, I'm going to very briefly go over the history of their non-compliance before I proceed to the comments.
Okay.
Okay, so In the summer of 2023, Grey Highlands staff became aware that several non-compliances existed on the property. Staff met with the owners and visited the site, where it was confirmed that the property had hosted several weddings without the appropriate permits for zoning. The hall building and several accessory structures had been built without building permits within a portion of the property that is subject to the holding provision that has been implemented due to proximity to the provincially significant wetland. The hall and many of the accessory structures, as has just been mentioned, also fall within the area of the property that falls within the Grey Soluble Conservation Authority's regulated area. And finally, the principal dwelling on the lot was being used as a short-term accommodation or short-term rental without the appropriate license from Grey Highlands Economic Development Department. So on June 12, 2023, an order of non-compliance was issued and posted on the property, and the owners of the property were directed to stop hosting weddings, occupying the hall, occupying and using the illegal accessory structures, and using the principal dwelling as a short-term rental unit. Since the order of the non-compliance was issued, the owners and their agent have been working with Grey Highlands, Grey County, and Grey Soluble Conservation Authority staff toward bringing the property into compliance. Just a brief segue here, we have had quite a few questions from the public as to why we accepted this application. The municipality has a statutory duty to accept the application and to move forward. I also wanted to note that, in looking at similar case law and looking at similar cases that have gone to the Ontario Land Tribunal, the outcome is always trying to bring the property towards compliance. And so one avenue for the owners of this property to bring this property into compliance is through going through the amendments that are before you today. So I just thought it would be fair to everybody to just go through that little piece before we moved on to the agency comments. Becky's already highlighted the comments that we've had from the Grey Soluble Conservation Authority. We will mention here that originally this was just a zoning bylaw amendment. It was circulated to county, and county planning staff originally provided us with these comments. In summary, Grey County staff would suggest that this application be deferred until the below points can be adequately addressed. That the applicants revise the proposal to more clearly demonstrate alignment with the resource-based recreational use definition. And county staff would suggest that the removal or significant scaling back of the special event use would be appropriate in this respect. Or that the applicants apply for a county official plan amendment to permit the special event use above and beyond what would generally be permitted within the rural designation. It should be noted here, they've done both. They've applied for the county official plan amendment. They've also scaled back the special event use compared to the original submission. County also suggests that the PJR be updated to discuss how vehicles will be accommodated on site, which they've done, given limited on-site parking opportunities. County staff would support the completion of a traffic brief if required by Grey Highlands. I'll note here that a traffic brief was not required and a traffic impact study was not required, as Kristine mentioned. Basically, traffic impact studies generally result in recommendations for improvements to entrances. The entrance for this site is already an improved paved entrance and it's already commercial grade. And so staff did waive the requirement to have a traffic impact study done for this particular file. County has also suggested that fulsome comments be provided by Grey Highlands building staff, which I'll get into in a moment, regarding the adequacy of the proposed interim portable toilets to ensure conformity with the Ontario Building Code. They suggested that comments from emergency and fire services be provided to ensure that the existing assembly hall can be adequately serviced for fire safety if required. So those comments will be required as part of the site plan control file prior to the issuance of building permits for any of the buildings. County also suggested that the environmental impact study be amended to take account of the above noted comments from planning and ecology staff, which I'll go through in a moment, and that further clarity be provided regarding the number and location of short-term accommodation spots proposed as part of the development, including any required updates to the servicing study. So from Grey County Planning and Ecology, we have that one, Should a considerable length of time and or a sudden change in policy occur prior to construction, a review of the assessment provided with the environmental impact study should be undertaken by a qualified ecologist to ensure compliance with the ESA. 15-meter feature protection zone should be applied to the significant woodland, and 30-meter protection zone should be applied to all wetland features. 3 feature protection zones as per figure 3 in the environmental impact statement should be adhered to, and site alteration to these zones should be reviewed by an ecologist prior to undertaking. 4, to ensure no nesting birds or roosting bats will be harmed as a result of clearing, activities associated with the deck removal, tree removals, installation of the septic system, and scheduled tree maintenance should be timed to occur between November 1st to March 31st, and no removals outside of the focus area is identified in the environmental impact study, which should occur without the consultation of a qualified professional. 5, in terms of trail maintenance, the trail network should be located entirely within the subject property limits. All trails passed should be installed at grade. No excavation or tree clearing is permitted within the approval of the approval of Grey County and the municipality of Grey Highlands. Trail width should be a maximum of 1.2 meters. No structures should be installed along the trail without approval from Grey County and the municipality of Grey Highlands, and trails should not extend on neighboring properties. 6, in terms of the proposed fountain and dock, the location and size of the dock should be selected in consultation with an ecologist prior to installation. A fountain system is designed to minimize harm to aquatic wildlife and should be used. Example, a pump cage or mesh to prevent snail animals from being drawn into the pump, small animals. The condition of the wetland feature and the function should be regularly monitored for signs of impact to aquatic habitat, and the fountain should not be used when overnight temperatures fall below 0 degrees Celsius to mitigate impacts to turtle wintering in the wetland. The fountain can be restarted in the spring only when overnight temperatures reach 0 degrees Celsius and ice has completed melting in the pond, and chemicals such as chlorine or other substances that are harmful to aquatic flora and fauna should not be used. And in general terms of operation, the area of disturbance should be minimized prior to any construction activities, and the limit of construction should be established to prevent accidental encroachment into adjacent natural features. Alterations of existing buildings should be reviewed and by an ecologist prior to any undertaking of any injured animals found during construction should be transported to an appropriate wildlife rehabilitation center. From Grey Highlands Transportation and Public Spaces Services, the 2 asphalt entrances are historical in nature. The gravel driveway to the west of the house is not an approved entrance. Any changes to the asphalt entrances would require entrance permits. Grey Highlands Building Services Department. Building Services has an order to comply on this property, and this must be satisfied prior to the building permits for any other structures are issued. The holding tank was installed as well without a permit, so an engineer assessment of the on-site sewage needs and site conditions will need to be assessed to service this site. All building permits must meet the Ontario Building Code and applicable law at the time of application. Grey Highlands Environmental Services. Environmental Services notes that the plan does not indicate an area for waste and recycling. This property would be eligible for only 1 waste and 1 recycling cart, with the option to pay for 1 additional waste cart, which are anticipated to not be enough capacity to accommodate the waste generated from this property. The proponent would be responsible for setting up an alternative collection method, and no other comments or concerns at this time from Environmental Services. From Grey Highlands Fire and Emergency Services, no comments at this time. That's it for the agency comments. I will also say that we did, as Becky mentioned, receive a number of comments from the public. 2 of these members of the public have asked that their letters be read out in their entirety, which is what we generally do when it's explicitly asked for. So Chair Allan, I will proceed to read those 2 letters out if that is all right with you.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. This is from one of the neighbors to the south. My name is Paul Capobianco, and I'm a resident of Grey County, 2 doors down from the subject proposed development. I purchased this property in August 2023 as my primary residence and a place to retire. I asked that this letter be read out in its entirety during the public meeting scheduled for October 28, 2024. Since I have lived here, this is my second application for zoning. This is the second application for zoning change on my street, steps away from my door. There are many concerns that I have with this proposal. 1, noise. Noise is my utmost concern with respect to this proposal. This is a residential area. Families live here. The noise created from loud music and a large guest list into late hours of the night does not belong next door to homes. The aerial views provided in the submissions do not indicate the close proximity of neighboring residences. Below is a summary of the noise study taken from the supporting and environmental impact study. I'm going to skip over the summary of the noise study, but he has several concerns with the noise study that he wants to point out. The proposed highest noise level would begin at 75 to 80 decibels, considered loud and equivalent to city traffic or a noisy restaurant. From my experience at weddings, actual noise levels are much higher than these examples and therefore is likely to be much higher than indicated in the report. The noise would reduce to 45 to 50 decibels, comparable to a refrigerator or moderate rainfall by the time it reached the woodland area. Given the neighbors have heard music clearly enough through the forest from previous illegal parties at this site, this is difficult to believe. No actual testing of music or noise was conducted to see how far it travels. In the study, noise propagation models were used to estimate the noise that would be experienced at the identified nearby receptors, and no actual measurements from noise traveled to these locations were taken. Furthermore, the initial measurements taken at the sound source locations that were fed into the propagation model were taken using a pink noise source, which is not representative of the type of sound waves that would be emitted from party music at these locations. It would have peaks that are much higher. Grey County's noise control bylaw includes general prohibitions such as persistent barking, squealing of a motor vehicle, the use of a horn or alarm bell, or noise caused by a defective muffler system. I would say that the type of noises that would be generated at this venue into the late hours of the night would be louder than any of the aforementioned. The amplified noise can be made in the day, afternoon, and night, any weekend, all year long until the proposed 11/11:30 cutoff times. I will reiterate, people and children live here. Noise generated on site is to be measured by noise meters, and the owners propose to provide clear limitations with respects to noise limits and times, and identify the person responsible for noise management. It is hard to believe that this will be monitored and enforced when the people exceeding the limits are those that have rented the venue, particularly when the owners and their staff are not on site for the entire duration, including overnight. What will the owners who live in Kitchener do to control all this once an event is underway? 2, traffic. Having a venue like this will generate even more traffic on an already busy street. This, in addition to Gandhi Glamping, recently approved 10 tents, max 20 people, 10 months a year, right across the street from the proposed venue. There will be setup and catering crews coming and going prior and after events, possibly every day of the week, in addition to waste and garbage collection vehicles. Party guests that will arrive generally at the same time to a parking area that is very close to the street and will likely cause backup onto the road. Enforcement. Significant burden would be added to the Eugenia Grey County Police in the event that they need to respond to regular noise complaints. As mentioned, the owners live in Kitchener. I do not read any mention of staff being on site at all times that guests are there, which would be typical and necessary at a venue such as this. 4, revenue for Eugenia and Grey County. Other than the possible increase in property tax, the revenue generated from this proposed venue will not benefit the Eugenia or Grey County economy. The event space is geared towards out-of-towners who will likely hire their own non-local caterers, decorators, etc. to service the event. The owners themselves are not residents of Grey County. There will be very little, if any, revenue generated remaining in Grey County. 5, septic. The proposed indicates decommissioning of the existing septic system and installation of a new one within 3 years, with temporary portable measures implemented in the meantime. This sounds unsanitary for 100 people. The supporting information evidenced is very non-committal with no concrete plans, timelines, or budget. The hangar does not appear to have any plans for septic or water. 6, nature. Nature is all around immediate and surrounding areas of the property. I enjoy watching wildlife come out of my front lawn every day. The wooded area extends unobstructed into neighboring properties, as mentioned in the snip above. Likely most wildlife will avoid the area with even the lowest proposed noise levels for the venue. Wildlife in their natural habitat will be compromised with this venue proposal, given the amount of people, noise, smells, and disruptions several days a week. 7, it goes up to 12. Trespassing. Pictures on the Highlands estate social media illustrate a snowshoeing and walks in nature. Despite the apparent marked trails, it's reasonable to expect that some party goers will disregard them and go off trail, leading to possible trespassing of neighboring properties, further disruption of nature, and pollution among the woodland and wetland areas, which comprises a significant portion of the property. 8, garbage. Almost every week, I walk up and down the street in front of my house and collect a garbage bag of debris and bottles, cans that have been thrown out car windows. With the added traffic and partying this event will attract, this is sure to increase. 9, adhering to rules. The owners and operators have an obvious issue with following and adhering to the laws and regulations. The servicing brief provided indicates that some of the structures on site, including the special events hall, were constructed without the proper approvals and permits in place, and some of the activities on the site are not permitted under the current zoning bylaw designations. It is my understanding that the owners and operators of Highlands Estates have had events that have been shut down before. They've asked Grey Highlands for permission to have an event, being denied, and proceeded to hold it anyway. They have and currently advertise Highlands Estates as the perfect wedding venue with bookings for upcoming dates available. Again, all of the above without proper approvals in place. They seem to operate under the principle that it is easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. Giving them any approvals at all would be seen as blanket approval in their eyes. For this reason, I would even caution the approval of a short-term accommodation permit on the residents currently in process. 10, overnight accommodations. This number seems to be unknown, or I was at least unable to locate it in the supporting information. There is also no information about the new 5 guest cabins that are included in the proposal. What is their location on site, how big they are, and how many people they accommodate. I note that the environmental report indicates no additional features or buildings are proposed on site, with no mention of the 5 new cabins. 11, property value. Based on venue location, privacy and noise factors alone, approval of the subject proposal will surely and unjustly lower the demand and property values of the surrounding residences at no fault of the homeowners. It stands to reason that any potential buyers will take the proximity of this type of event venue into consideration and be deterred to invest in any home in the surrounding area. 12, construction. In addition to the septic construction, which will supposedly be completed in 3 years, the environmental report mentions that the owner-operators had discussed installing a dock and fountain in the wetland feature with no specific plans. Another demonstration of disruption of nature and noise that will be ongoing with the proposed venue. I'm an avid outdoors person and choose Eugenia as my forever residence because of the wonderful community and mutual respect of nature and from its residents. Families live here. This is not a commercial industrial area. This is not a place for a wedding venue for 95 plus guests 365 days a year, with what seems like overnight accommodations for at least 1/3 that amount of people. The remainder of which will be driving home on the streets of Eugenia after a night of partying and drinking. This is not a place for loud band music and amplified DJ sounds that travel and can and have been heard clearly by the neighboring residents through the forest, or guests trampling through precious nature and wetlands, possibly trespassing on neighboring properties. It was very nice of the owner to pour hard out on Facebook to tell you, I don't think I'll read that part. That's a little bit across the line. He finishes with, I asked the voting panel to consider all these points and concerns I have mentioned and ask themselves if they would like this venue approved 2 doors away from their homes where they live and plan to retire. The answer, I'm sure, will be a clear and resounding no. And the other letter is much shorter. This is from the direct neighbor from the property to the southwest of the main property, sort of used to be part of the original parcel with the main property, to whom it may concern. I know that we have sent an overwhelming amount of email regarding this development, so I will summarize as concisely as I can. Let me open by saying that I have no objection to some of the development proposals, but there are items that I cannot live with. Our intention and dream for 466615, when my father and I built and landscaped it, so he's the former owner of the entire property, was to provide a homeopathic clinic, which was Aquarius Health Resort and Aquarius Clinic, and a quiet, nurturing environment in which people could heal in both mentally and physically. It operated as such for close to 45 years. The property is perfect to see and enjoy all the nature can give you in this area. It is a perfect property for yoga, teaching, seminars, etc., and I'm in favor of this part of the application. For the following reasons, I'm totally against the following items: wedding receptions, concerts, venues that involve large groups of people partying with a loud music source, and the applicants being exempt from following existing setback bylaws are my main concerns. If the music is playing at 80 decibels, people have to speak at 85 to 90 decibels to communicate. If you want to be part of a different conversation, you have to speak louder than the music plus the first conversation, and on it goes. Add to that, the conversations are not isolated to one spot and are spread out over the area where the event is taking place, as well as being disruptive to the neighbors. The additional noise and human traffic will push the existing wildlife further into the bush, and we will no longer enjoy their company. Liability for the neighbors is a huge issue. All 3 neighbors have had people from their events trespass already. Recent studies have proven that with rare exceptions, noisy venues are allowed on a property, the neighboring property value drops by up to 40%, which, how is this fair to neighbors to allow the applicant to profit while the neighbors lose money? I've reached out to local representatives from RE/MAX and Royal LePage. Both are certain that if the wedding and concert part of the application is approved, our property values will go down. The quiet, holistic healing changes should not make a significant difference. However, it is unlikely to make property value go up. That's what he says he's okay with, and he lists a couple of changes that he would like, including limiting to 3 wedding events per year. This is the one that Becky mentioned, 50 people or less, et cetera, et cetera. Becky's kind of mentioned all of what he's saying the site should be held to. And he says, thank you for taking the time to read and consider my opinions and requests. And that is all.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, we'll get to council questions. Any questions from council? Councillor Wickens. You're still on mute. Will any other council members? We'll see if Dan can get things sorted out. Councillor Allwood.
Thank you, Chair Allan. At some point in the presentation, it was mentioned that to limit on-site parking, there would be a shuttle service from where? Where in Grey Highlands or Grey County would they be parking vehicles and shuttling people to this event? Thank you.
Who would like to take that? Kristine? Okay.
Sure, thank you through the chair. That hasn't necessarily been determined as of yet, but the idea is that that there would be a pickup service could be provided, and that would be done by the guests themselves, not by the owners of the property.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dubik?
Thank you. So a quick comment first. It was mentioned earlier that, directing appropriate economic development in the right locations is important. And I think that is something, we as a council are being presented with. So, I think we've been seeing some files coming up, and it's now forcing us to think about, how we do want to develop our economic activities. I do have maybe just two quick questions. So just to follow up on the traffic one, our planner said that they waived the traffic brief requirement, but I am still interested in that because it seems that there is limited on-site parking opportunities. And so just wondering if maybe we can talk a little bit more about that, any more sort of context around that, because even if, shuttles could be encouraged and would be great, that's not always going to happen. And, if you do have up to 95 people, that could be 40, 50 cars, plus additional cars, vans, etc. for vendors. So if you can just maybe provide more context on that one.
Who's going to take that?
Trying to see whether Kristine's hand is raised for this one or in error.
If it was still
Kristine.
up, I was wondering the same thing. Okay, go ahead,
fine.
Kristine.
Thank you, through the chair. So we are providing what we would anticipate to be the parking requirement. Like, we don't think that there's a parking shortage. The planning report breaks down all the uses, and we are meeting the requirements of the zoning bylaw. So there's not a parking shortage at all. However, we would agree that, if that a shuttle service to the property would be beneficial to all, for a number of reasons. But we're not asking for a reduction in parking. It's been identified within the planning report and the draft zoning bylaw amendment simply to identify the required parking.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dubik, second question.
Yes, thank you. So obviously noise is a big concern, right, because it is in a residential area, and so you do have neighbors, etc. Just wondering if you can provide maybe a little bit more context, because we've heard some comments, from community members and residents about the noise. I'm not a noise expert, so when I look at those noise reports, they're not necessarily intuitive to me. And just wondering maybe if you can provide a little bit more color about some of the concerns that were brought up by the resident questions about, noise sometimes not just being, coming from, directly from the hall, is going to be also from the parking lot areas. If and maybe how noise was tested was, was there, music brought out, into an area just to kind of see how it gets, how it reverberates, in the area. Maybe just a little bit of context would be helpful.
Kristine.
Thank you, through the chair. So I'm not a noise expert either. So I am not comfortable providing that detail to you at this meeting, but we will respond to all of the questions. There were comments raised within the peer review as well. So if you would allow, we would prefer to provide a more wholesome response from the technical experts to ensure that the comments received are really exact. And I would also suggest that the noise consultant can sort of dumb it down, as I spoke earlier to him about, to provide, I think, some of the answers in maybe in a scientific response, but as well as a response that that perhaps you and I understand more clearly. So I would prefer to provide the responses in a written format.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wickens, did you figure things out? There we go.
Yeah, I pushed a button and blanked my whole screen, and then I finally figured out how to get back on, and now here I am. So one of my biggest concerns is about noise as well. And I don't see anywhere in the report about distances to the closest dwellings, receptors, whatever you want to may call them. I wondered if anybody could shed some light on, distances between the hall and the hangar to the nearest dwellings.
Okay, Kristine?
Thank you. Through the chair, I think I've already indicated that we would provide a wholesome response in writing, and that was a question that was raised by a ratepayer. I do think there were distances within the report, but we could certainly provide a response that is specific to the distances from the hangar in the hall to what's considered the sensitive receptors. And as well, I believe there was a ratepayer comment about a newer home as well being in the area, and a question as to whether that sensitive receptor had been included. So we would also provide a response to that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mayor McQueen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Lots of good discussion and good comments made tonight. So the first question I have is, it was indicated that the hours of operation was reduced. What was proposed on that originally? Because I think now we're talking about 11:30 on Friday and Saturdays, and then 10:30 on midweek or something like that.
I think 11. Kristine? Do you have that information?
Thank you. Sorry, I'm just going to have to pull it up because I did not have the original submission pulled up. So just let me do that.
So I can continue while you're looking for that, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think the one thing, as a couple of other colleagues have made is noise. And I know that noise seems to travel more at night, especially if it's denser, and I don't know what it is. It just it seems to travel. So I know it seems to be, since COVID, events and like that don't seem to go on as late in the evening as they were prior to. I don't know what's changed or whatever, and maybe we're all getting older and maybe we just can't stay awake any longer. I don't know, but I just wonder if that is something that can be thought about, because a lot of people appreciate their sleep and if the receptors, and it does travel, noise does travel. It depends, different nights or different circumstances and that type of thing. And certainly maybe the event can continue on, but maybe the noise DBAs do reduce maybe sooner, so you don't get that part of talking over the noise and that type of, or over the music. When the music is loud, people talk louder, and I think that was a reasonable comment to be made there. So I only raise that is, I know out in the rural part of, and it is mentioned here residential, but I think this is more rural than residential. But I know people live as a resident in the rural part of Grey Highlands, so and that type of thing. And I know that sound can travel very differently at different circumstances. So that's one comment. The other part is it talked about accommodations and parking and moving around and shuttle. Is there any mention about it? We talk about economics is where people, if there's only 45 cars and it's 95 up to 95, well, there could be 2 people per car up to that, or there could be the other circumstances. People are staying in the area, which does have an economic spinoff in the sense of other accommodations and that type of thing. And I don't know if there was any discussion around that. It was mentioned by the first letter that Andrew read out about local hiring, local jobs. I know that's something that from an economic point we always look at as well. Does it generate revenue for young people, for other people? Is there jobs going to be created from this? That's something that even from the Grey County Economic Development Team does look at in a sense. So, but there are those trade-offs as well. So I'd like to know a little bit more on that part. I would say probably in the most part of responsibility, things have changed in the last 30 years as far as responsible consumption of alcohol, and there is those rules that people have to follow, and that type of thing. I think a shuttle is something that maybe would be very much wise would be wise to have. And also insurance, I guess there's also in the sense of insurance, and I guess that would be up to the vendors, or they provide that type of insurance and that type of thing too, because I think there's a lot of things can happen when everybody's having a great time and enjoying themselves, but all those things have to be covered off. So just some comments there in general of, is there any local economic development in the sense of people working, hiring? Is there going to be that type of thing, or is the one individual mentioned in the letter that they won't be local? Accommodations is another thing, and noise and event timing, in the sense of maybe the event can go longer, but maybe the noise isn't as loud. So those are just some comments I think that are generalizing, but I think those are things that a lot of people can probably relate to in that sense. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Kristine, did you find the original?
Yeah, thank you, through the chair. So the original ask was until midnight on Friday and Saturdays, and 11 p.m. then the rest of the week. And so the request now is for Friday and Saturday, 11:30 until 10 p.m. weekdays and Sundays. So that's been the reduction in the timing. Do you want me to say that again?
No, that's fine.
That's okay.
But the event can be, and I attended a wedding a few weeks back that was an outdoor wedding in a tent.
Yes.
And, I just found it interesting. By 10 o'clock, a lot of people have gone home. And it just seems to be, it's changed maybe when we were all younger and we stayed at 2 o'clock. I don't know what. But the event, my point is the event going on, but maybe the noise or the music doesn't go on. That's the part that I think is, I don't think anybody has an issue with people enjoying conversation, but I think a lot it's a loud noise that goes on, and it seems to get louder as the night goes on, and that's the part that seems to be when people are either got a lot of people work, a lot of people enjoy their property, a lot of people quiet, and it was mentioned about animals and stuff like that. But I just
okay.
wondered if there's something different between noise and the event going on to that time.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Kristine,
yeah,
quickly.
Thank you, through the chair. So I do agree that that's the amplified music hours. Number one. Number two, you had just spoken about day and night, and I would just indicate that the MPC 300 does have requirements for day and night, and that the noise report identifies that both of those day and night quantifiable numbers or decibels are met. And with respect to economics, we would expect that there are local jobs or hiring of, which would include local caterers, florists, musicians, and any opportunity for any wellness specialists or anyone else that someone utilizing the site may hire people to come on site for any type of service. And I think that's common to any of these types of events that we visit, that they are locally utilizing those businesses.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on to somebody else here. Councillor Lowhead.
Thank you, Chair Allan. So, a couple of things jumped out to me about this application. First question here is some clarity in regards to the setback. So I know that a number of the concerns from the neighbors are in relation to the setbacks and how they'll be amended. And if we can just get some clarity on what the setbacks are, presently, and then what the amendments will be or what the concessions will be. And if there's no way to develop the property without those particular setback amendments. That was my first question.
Okay, Kristine.
Thank you, through the chair. We're not requesting any amendments to setbacks, and so Andy can maybe jump in, but I think what the reference in one of the letters is that there's a 15-meter interior side yard setback, and that there was a concern that one of the platforms was in that setback or over the property line, and that has now been corrected, and we are aware of that interior side yard setback, and we're not asking for any reduction in that.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just
Councillor.
add here, sorry. So at this time, no relief from the setbacks has been asked for. Right now, the tent platforms, I don't like to speak about ongoing compliance issues, but right now, the tent platform that encroached across the property line has been moved from encroaching across the property line. However, the tent platforms are still roughly within the setback. And so, as Kristine was saying, any kind of ask for setback relief would be accompanied by some kind of justification as to why it could not be fit outside of the setback. So I'll just mention that at this time. And then
Okay, thank you.
the other pertinent piece of information is for similar camping uses, the setback is roughly 2.5 meters from the property line.
Okay, Councillor Lohitt.
Thank you, Chair Allan. So next question then is sort of, to that effect. I mean, one concern I can imagine from the neighbors would be a sort of, creep of size of this organization, right? So that eventually, an additional platform is built and ends up within that setback. Things become expanded, this, that, or the other. And then also, we've limited to 95 guests. But my question is, who then enforces that? So, if there is a creep of the infrastructure on the property or violations of maximum guests or parking, et cetera, on a particular event. And then what repercussions are there? What are we able to do? And I guess what I'm specifically asking is, would we be able to then take this license away from the organizers here? Is that how that works?
Sorry. So the question there was, who is going to regulate them not being within the setback?
Who's going to enforce?
Okay,
yeah.
So
if I can, either regulate, monitor, regulate if there's a neighbor who complains again, says, this actually, the yurts hypothetically are creeping ever closer to my property year over year. And I'm sure that there's been weddings with guests of 120 or more. What are the repercussions in that kind of situation?
So I'll try to provide a relatively quick answer to this one. The way that this one will move forward, if the file goes through these amendments and they are approved, the applicant will be going through site plan control, and through site plan control, we essentially affix all of the exterior structures and buildings where they are. Any kind of addition to that would require a site plan amendment. And so that's all kind of agreed to within the site plan agreement, which is a legally binding agreement. After the amendments go through, after the site plan control approval is given, this would become a bylaw. And so it's essentially a bylaw compliance issue moving forward. It would have to be bylaw to issue any kind of non-compliance orders if there is a non-compliance. So it is largely, something that would be reported on to bylaw by neighbors. Does that kind of address your questions? Yep. Okay. Perfect.
Okay, Councillor Duvick.
Thank you, Chair Allan. So maybe just two quick questions. One is around lights. So not sure in terms of, if we have like a number of halls and structures and yurts, etc., parking, what would be sort of maybe, I'm wondering if, we need to think about sort of the lights that will be used at night. And I know we don't have a dark sky policy, but it is something that's, still top of mind about the environment, about the sensitivity to flora and fauna, etc. So just wondering, if that's been discussed or if that's part of the plan.
That'll be handled with site plan, I believe.
That's correct. And sorry, I'm just seeing that Planner Hillier has her hand up there too.
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks. Yeah, that's a great question. So the county does have dark sky policies, and so we certainly encourage dark sky compliant lighting. That is usually something that our planning ecology staff pick up on in their comments, and they recommend that the environmental impact study in particular does address that. I don't know, I can't remember offhand if they had picked up on that or not on this one, but it's definitely something I'll bring up with them because that is part of our standard comments.
It was sort of added as a comment about the local environment from planning ecology. It was in there.
Oh,
Yep.
perfect. Thanks. Yeah,
Yep.
that's great. But yeah, to your point as well, like it's not just a natural heritage. It also, if there's light projecting onto the neighboring properties, that's a concern as well. So yeah, that's something that we would definitely look at it. Well, Grey Highlands would look at the site plan control stage.
Yep, there will be a separate condition within the site plan control agreement that makes them address, light pollution in general. Yep.
Okay, thank you. And just
Okay.
maybe just one more quick one.
Okay.
Thank you. So I know we did touch on the historical non-compliance. Just wondering, if there's maybe any reason that we should be aware of in terms of, why, permits for, wedding events and halls and accessory structures and short-term rentals were not sought out.
Not sure if that's something we should or need to answer. Planner Payne?
I would suggest it would be inappropriate for us to provide the answer to that question, unless Kristine had any further comment on that.
No, not at this time.
Okay. All right. Okay, so I have one question, and it was touched on in one of the letters. The principal residence is going to be used for a short-term accommodation. So does that mean that the owners will not be living on site? Kristine?
Thank you, through you. The zoning bylaw would allow that the dwelling be used as a single detached dwelling or the STA use. So it could be either or. And it wouldn't necessarily, of course, it could be used as a single detached dwelling and not by the landowner.
So they will be or won't be living on site?
Well, it could be used as a dwelling or the STA use. So the current zoning would allow it to be used as a dwelling as well, and so we're just bringing that forward. So I think it's irrelevant if I tell you yes or no, because it would be up to the landowner moving forward.
Okay, Mayor McQueen, very quickly.
Yeah, I'll be quick. And you touched on something that just I thought of is, so through our Airbnb, or not Airbnb, our short-term accommodations, if there's an event going on, there's a contact person or somewhere if there's an issue. So this is a larger than a short-term accommodation. This is a large event. Is there somebody, or like, if something goes wrong or something is not, keeping on top of, okay, no, you're not supposed to do that. Like, things can unravel pretty quickly. So how are things kept in order to what is being proposed? I guess that's my question.
Okay, Kristine.
Yes, thank you, through the chair. Someone would be on site at all times. That is a hired individual, whether it's the landowner or someone that they've hired to be on site at all times. So I agree, this is not an STA use where you just need to call someone within, so many kilometers or so many minutes away. There does need to be a full-time staff member on site.
Okay, Councillor Allwood, quickly.
Thank you, Chair Allan. Just a question on no requirement for relief from setbacks. The existing hangar and the existing uncovered special event areas look like they're inside of the significant woodlands and wetland areas. Do they require exemptions, or? That's my question, I guess. Thank you.
Okay, we've got two people who keep jumping all over my screen. Becky.
Yeah, thanks for that question. So I know the hangar structure, I believe it's located right along the edge of the significant woodlands feature. I do believe that kind of the ceremony area where they would have the actual wedding kind of ceremonies, if that's an option to people, I think that is maybe located within the very fringe of the significant woodlands. But aside from kind of having a clearing and chairs that they move in and out, it doesn't seem like there's any actual kind of permanent development that's proposed there. I think our mapping did show a very small patch of significant woodlands in the area that's proposed for the septic system. But I believe that the environmental impact study has put forward the suggestion that that shouldn't be considered a significant woodland patch because it's not located to the surrounding woodlands, essentially.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm not seeing any more hands up. Before I go to the public, we've been here for some of us over 2 hours. Do we need to take a break right now, or are we okay to finish this file? Okay, not seeing any waving of hands in desperation, so okay. I'm going to go to the public. Any person present wishing to object to or support the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and or proposed county official plan amendment, or have any comments or questions, please indicate, state your name and address, and you can use the raise hand feature on computer. And I see there is somebody on a phone. *9 will raise your hand, and we won't be moving you over. You'll just be able to speak. There'll be no camera. So the first one is the telephone attendee. So if we could, there we go. Oh, they're moved over. Okay, go ahead. *6 to unmute. There we go.
Okay, thank you. I live in Utah, Virginia.
And please state, just a second, state your name and address, please.
Sharon Wickens, 194446, Braid County Road 13.
Okay.
Okay, I'm wondering about security when there'll be alcohol on site for venues and that, as any other party. They will, I don't know if they're not going to have alcohol, but that many people, I would presume that they would be required to have a security company to monitor alcohol drinking, behavior, and stuff like that. That's my question.
Thank you. Who wants to answer that? I'm not seeing anybody respond to that, so maybe that is something that is in the future report. Can we do that, Kristine?
Thank you. Yes, through the chair. I mean, yeah, a liquor would potentially be served and a liquor license would be required. So any requirements of a liquor license would have to be adhered to.
Okay, thank you. All right. Moving on, John Daniel.
Hi. We have the property to the east side of them, 46657, 12th concession B. A lot of my comments and questions had been asked through the various neighbors already, so as of now, I'm just opposed to the change in the bylaws.
Okay, thank you. And we'll move Jim over.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. My name is Jim Montgomery. I live at 466687 12th concession B, just east of the proposed development. Again, a lot of my comments and questions have been spoken about already, so I'll be brief. We've owned our property for about 15 years. It was a weekend property for the first 12 years. We moved here permanently in 2021, kind of retired. We looked at moving to a new property, but really liked the area, especially the peace and quiet and the abundant wildlife. We decided to invest in our existing property instead. 2 years ago, we applied for and received a permit to build a garage. Last year, we applied for and received a permit for a house renovation/addition. These permits were requested and granted under existing noise and zoning bylaws. Looks like the rules were not being followed by everyone. Highland Estates was and still is zoned as a health spa. It was very concerning to read in the Planning Report 2024-61 that the building permit process was ignored and several buildings were illegally constructed. Looks like some buildings were also constructed on the Conservation Authority's regulated area. I know it's already been discussed. Also, existing zoning bylaws were ignored, hosting weddings and operating as a short-term rental. We are not against change, but within reason. We have no issues with a lot of the changes being proposed. We are fine with the following: to create a peaceful space where families and individuals come to feel well, recharge, and connect. Also hosting wellness retreats, yoga sessions, all good. We do not support the request to be exempt from the noise bylaw every day of the year. To be exempt till 10 or 11 o'clock during the week and 11:30 on weekdays is very intrusive. Highland Estates indicates they want to focus on wellness and community, and small eco-friendly weddings designed for those seeking an intimate nature-based experience. 95 people is not a small wedding. It'll have a large impact on neighbors, wildlife, and the wetlands. Parking for over 55 cars will obviously create additional traffic. They talked about shuttles. There'll probably be some buses come from hotels, dropping and picking up guests. More loud noise. Last summer, there was an event held on the Highland Estates property. We could hear the music very loud and clear in our backyard. Music, especially live bands, are loud. We like to enjoy the peace and quiet of our backyard. Numerous birds, deer, rabbits, and even coyotes at night. This will change when the noise becomes excessive. I read that noise studies were completed, but the decibel levels they tested seemed very low to me. It also appears these studies were conducted with Highland Estates equipment. Does this mean that the DJs and live bands will not be allowed to bring their own equipment, speakers, amplifiers? The typical DJ is around 70 to 75 dBA, and live bands are closer to 100. And those are just guidelines. We all know as the night goes on, the music gets louder. I also want to mention there's already a nature wedding site less than 5 kilometers away. I believe this neighborhood does not need another nature wedding venue. In addition, the zoning bylaw was amended earlier this year to allow a glamping site consisting of 10 cottages directly across the road from Highland Estates. I won't get into details, but this change was granted with restrictions on the use and no change to the existing noise bylaws. In summary, my main concern is noise, but also the negative impact on wildlife, the wetlands, and traffic. We did not improve our living accommodations to be negatively impacted by changes to the existing noise and zoning bylaws. We are all for wellness and nature, but a wedding/event/concert venue will have a negative impact on our wellness as well as the neighbors. Thanks for listening.
Okay, thank you. Could the people that have spoken already lower their hand? It's and Clerk Van Alstyne too, if you could move them back into the attendee, please. And they're still showing up on the screen. There we go. Great, thank you. And we'll go to Aki next. Oh, she put her hand down again. Hey, Aki.
Okay, it's Aki Mansika, and I live at 466-541 12th Concession B, and
Okay.
I'm 3 properties over. I'm just opposed to the size of the events venue. I'm not opposed to a small nature-oriented facility, but this seems like a little over the top in a rural residential area. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you. And I'll go to Crystal next.
Hi there. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Crystal. Our family has owned a property at 46666. That's 4 6s. 466663, 12th concession B. So just down the street. I've now inherited the property, and we bring our kids there. You know, my sister and her family as well. And we've already experienced what other people have already iterated. So I won't go into great detail, but I actually remarked the last time we were up how noisy it was already. And I just can't imagine how much louder it will be should this project move forward. So I'm voicing my concern against the noise request. And that's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll go to Andrew next.
My name is Andrew Grieve. I have a cottage at 134 Taylor Road. I think a lot of the concerns have been covered already. Like many, my main one is noise, and I just thought it might help put it in perspective that during the wedding last year, we could hear we could make out the words that were spoken during the speeches. So not music sound, but speeches. And according to Google Maps, we're 440 meters straight line distance away from the property. So it's a little bit hard to believe or to imagine that if the doors are being kept open, that the noise would be that much quieter going forward, that especially those closer than us to the property wouldn't be able to also hear speeches.
Okay, thank you for those comments. And we'll go to Doug.
Thank you for hearing me, and thank you, Andrew, for reading my letter. There's just a couple other things I'd like to touch on, just to try to help us moving forward partly. Many of us found trying to follow the documentation that was being presented about the application itself online on not so much the county, but Grey Highlands website, hard to follow because it kept changing and it was hard to figure out what was update and what was new and old, like the numbers kept changing all the time. And it just makes it hard for the public to really figure out exactly what's going on. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that in one of the reports, it was talking about like a low people density on the property. And it is a large property, but I believe they're only looking at utilizing 6 acres for the main events, 2.5 hectares out of 40 that are available. Having 100 or more people concentrated in that small space repetitively, in my opinion, isn't sustainable. Especially if you look at the map that we haven't seen before that was posted tonight, and some of that area is now being consumed by parking. When you have large numbers of people at a small event that wraps around noise, they're all going to be in that area. They're not going to be out in the bush hiking or anything. They're going to be trampling everything that's there. I helped build that property. I'd hate to see it trampled, basically. I, like my neighbors, have no objection to a healing environment there as it was used before, maybe even a little bit more. But I can't see it supporting 95 people or 95 guests plus everybody else that's there serving them. Not without destroying wetlands and not without doing environmental damage and damage to the people that live there. Like was said before, my little corner of that property is going to be surrounded by 95 people. Where is there going to be peace and quiet? And the same with my neighbor to the west. Their property borders on there too. There's going to be 95 people walking around. Not every day of the week, we realize that, but I don't know. I guess that's really all I have to say. If you can help in some way make it easier for us to find accurate information, would be a help. And just consider what we're putting forward. It would be appreciated. But thank you for listening. Thank you for reading all the documentation that I sent in, if you did.
Great. Thank you, Doug. Okay, I think everybody that indicated they wanted to speak has spoken. Not seeing any other hands go up. So any last real quick comments or questions from council? We still have one more file. Okay, not seeing anything. So as there's no further discussion, this application to amend the Grey County official plan will be forwarded to a future county council meeting for further consideration. And the application to amend zoning bylaw 2004-50 will be forwarded to a future Grey Highlands council meeting. So thank you, Kristine. Thank you, Becky. Been a long night. So thank you for your reports. Okay. I think the next file is going to be as long or longer than this one. So I am going to say we're going to take a 10-minute break. So till 7:36. So there we go, 7:36. Make sure you mute and turn your cameras off. Okay. We're going to get started. All right. Our next item is agenda item 3.6, and it's a zoning bylaw amendment and local official plan amendment. Application number OP01-2020 and Z08-2020. I just want to point out too, we've been getting emails, and it says about amending the Grey County official plan. This is not a county official plan amendment, it's a local official plan amendment. So it's, yes, OP01-2020 and Z08-2020 Hawthorne Cottages, affecting lands owned by Brian and Jane Legree. The legal description is lot 9 and 10, Plan 22, Artemisia, TWR 488856, Grey Highlands, and it has a civic address of 105 Hawthorne. The notice of this public meeting was mailed by standard mail on the 8th day of October 2024 to the property owner and to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject property, in addition to all agencies and persons identified in the Planning Act. At this time, council will hear presentations by the applicant or their agent. We have somebody representing this file that wishes to speak. And Ernest, if we could move Ernest over, please. Or sorry, it's Ernest.
Hi, good morning, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I believe I have sent the staff a slide presentation. All right, that's good. Thank you. So, good evening, everyone. My name is Ernest Young. I'm a planner with MP Planning at 44A King William Street, Huntsville, Ontario, P1H1G3. We are the acting agent of the subject property at 1005 Hawthorne Lane. I would like to thank the council for allowing us to speak to the application. Next slide, please. For some background about the application, the property has been operated as a campground with 13 campsites historically. The same number of campsites as proposed in this application, 9 of which are site for trailers and 4 of which are transient tent camping site for campers. The operation has been temporarily suspended due to the enforcement action and pressure brought forward by the municipal bylaw enforcement officer and municipal solicitor. A zoning application was submitted in 2017, aimed to legalize the use as a resource-based recreational campground. However, the zoning application was brought forward to the Ontario Municipal Board in 2018, where the Ontario Municipal Board denied the application. However, it's important to note that the OMB denied the application because the application was missing another required planning application, which was the official plan amendment and the required supporting document, including the environmental impact study and the site surfacing report. It's not a negative decision made against the proposed use. We are resubmitting the application with the required supporting studies, which provide additional information assessing and addressing the OMB decision and authorities requirement. Next slide, please. The official plan amendments seek a site-specific provision under the township's official plan to resume and continue the use of the site as a resource-based recreational campground with 13 campsites. Next slide, please. For the zoning bylaw amendment, other than requesting permission for the proposed campground, the zoning bylaw amendment also seek to address any nonconformity on the properties. It should be noted that the current zoning bylaw does not explicitly prohibit resource-based campground that do not perfectly adhere to the provision of the current zoning bylaw. It's intended that applicant for these uses seek relief through the appropriate process for the township's approval. Next slide, please. The campground is operated by Hawthorne Cottage and Cabin of Lake Eugenia, and a family-owned business that offers seasonal camping opportunities. 9 of the sites on the property are for seasonal trailer parking, and 4 of the site will be used as transient tent campsite for campers. Staff and owner will be present on site to provide service and address any concern. The campground is accessible via Hawthorne Lane from County Road Concession 8. Each site is approximately 13 to 13 meter in area and can accommodate most travel trailer and motorhome models. Next slide, please. The site sketch has been provided for council, staff, and public review. The sketch depicted the general layout of the property, the configuration of each camping site, and any existing structure on the property. As part of the application, a site surfacing report and an EIS have been submitted to justify the appropriateness of the surfacing method and the environmental impact. Next slide, please. We are providing the following merits to speak in support of the proposal. First of all, the property has been operating as a campground in history. The campground has not ceased operation voluntarily due to their own business consideration, but rather temporarily suspended operation due to enforcement action from the municipal bylaw officer. We simply want to resume and continue the use of a campground operation. No new development or structure are proposed, and the site already exists. This is simply a land use matter being resolved. Secondly, the PPS permit the proposed use as a resource-based recreational campground in the settlement area and rural lands. The EIS demonstrated a minimal impact on natural heritage features, meeting the policy under 4.1 of the PPS regarding natural heritage features. Thirdly, the proposed campground is permitted and in character with the inland lake and shoreline destination of the county's official plan. Fourthly, the proposed development is compatible with the natural environment and surrounding land use and will continue and provide an adequate vegetation buffer between the subject property and the surrounding land use. Fifthly, the campground built upon rural character and will provide opportunity for tourism and economical growth that leverage the area's natural assets while respecting them. Lastly, due to the proposal as a small scale operation, the proposed resource-based recreational use will generate little to no traffic with no negative impact or conflict with surrounding land uses. Next slide, please. Some concerns and comments regarding the following factors were raised. First of all, the surfacing. The county has provided comments regarding the surfacing report. The engineering consultant will be reviewing and addressing those comments, and a follow-up documents that address the comments will be available for the county and staff review at a later date. Regarding the environmental aspect of the file, an environmental impact study has been conducted and provided for the county staff for review, which include any assessment for impact on nearby natural heritage features. The report submitted for review generally support the proposed development by meeting the associated policies. We are aware that the county has provided comments regarding the EIS. The environmental consultant will be reviewing and addressing those comments, and a follow-up documents that address those comments will be made available for the council and staff review later on. Regarding noise maintenance and garbage, as mentioned in previous section, this is maintained and hosted campground. Staff will be present on site actively to monitor the activity throughout the campsite to ensure the noise level of campground does not negatively affect surrounding properties. Occupants will be provided with a list of code of conduct by which the occupant must abide to. Disorderly conduct or activity will be addressed by staff in a timely manner. The owner of the property of the campsite also has an existing short-term rental business across the proposed site. They are experienced in addressing and dealing with issues and concerns related to noise maintenance and garbage, and has been keeping a good record for addressing concerns from the neighbors and the municipality in a timely and professional manner. Public comments and support for the application also provide assurance that the property owner and staff have been working diligently in providing a great experience for customers and, most importantly, the neighboring properties. The township has bylaw regarding noise, property standard, etc. to address any unwanted activities. Also, there are numerous short-term rental throughout Lake Eugenia that are unhosted and not actively monitored by the property owner during the rental period. The proposed campground being maintained and monitored by on-site staff will result in limited disturbance compared to many existing short-term rental, including Airbnb in the area. The operation abutting the shoreline, which is operated by the same owner, offer very limited docking space, approximately 4 to 5 spaces available. And those docking sites are on a first come, first served basis. Moreover, as indicated in the staff report, there are several public access points on Lake Eugenia where the public can really offload their personal vehicles or watercraft into Lake Eugenia. Lastly, regarding the traffic, a traffic impact study was not required during correspondence with staff or during the pre-consultation phase. The 8th concession road, as a major county road, is designed to support a high volume of traffic throughout the region. Traffic control signs are properly installed and access is clearly indicated near the site and the surrounding area. An additional 13 vehicles that travel and leave the campground at a different time frame will have a minimal effect on local traffic. Next slide, please. Based on our planning justification, the approval of the OPA and ZBA to permit the campground on the subject property is appropriate and in character with the area. The application reflects good planning and are appropriate for the subject property. We will be submitting additional documents and information later on to address the concern and comments we received today and from the municipal staff. We are willing to answer any question you may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that presentation. So at this time, the municipal planner will advise of any comments received and provide an overview of the purpose and effect of the bylaw. Planner Pasha, please.
Thank you, Chair Allan. There is something I would like to go over just beforehand. It's regarding the background of this application, just so it could answer some questions from the public beforehand, if I may talk about that.
Sure.
Thank you. So in terms of the background, based on previous reports and discussion with the applicant's agent, the campground has historically been comprised of 13 sites, 9 of which were occupied by trailers on a seasonal basis. The other 4 sites were available to transient, weekend, or other short-term campers. The 9 seasonal trailers had washroom facilities internal to their recreational vehicles. Campers utilizing the 4 transient sites, i.e. weekend or other short-term, used the portable toilets that were brought onto the property at the beginning of every season, and also had access to the washroom facilities located at the owner's cabin park, a separate property to the west. The wastewater from the trailer and portable toilets were serviced by Wilton Sanitation on behalf of the owners. Potable water was supplied to the campsite and the cabin from a well located on the adjacent cabin property. Parking was provided on each individual site with a gravel parking lot that was also available for visitors. This is where the trailers, the vehicles for the trailers came through. The applicant previously applied for a, in history, applicant previously applied for a zoning amendment through the file Z16 2017, requesting to recognize the existing campground use on the subject property. The municipality did not support this application due to the lack of supporting documentation for the campground use. The decision was then appealed to the Ontario Municipal Board in 2018, where the OMB supported the municipality's decision to deny the application and dismiss the appeal based on the following. The tribunal finds, so this is a summary from the tribunal hearing in their minutes. The tribunal finds all 3 questions to be answered in the negative. A campground is not permitted use in the ILS designation, and thus the zoning bylaw amendment does not conform with the Grey Highlands local official plan. The required environmental studies were not submitted into evidence, and the reasons for their absence are not accepted. These were the environmental impact study as well as any other ANSI study. The methods of servicing are not permitted by the planning documents, and the mandatory study was not submitted into evidence, which is regarding their site servicing proposal or their servicing proposal. The OMB decision to dismiss the appeal was based on the necessary legislative requirements not having been met. The proposed campground use was not aligned with the Grey Highlands official plan, and the applicant did not provide the environmental studies, which included an EIS and an areas of natural and scientific interest study. Furthermore, the proposed servicing option was not supported by the PPS or the municipal official plan, and the servicing option study was not provided to provide support to support the servicing being proposed. In 2020, the applicant submitted a new set of applications in the form of an official plan amendment and a zoning and bylaw amendment, and has recently completed the required studies that were missing in the previous application. Members of the public have asked why this application has been deemed complete and is being heard at a public planning hearing when the proposal in question does not necessarily adhere to each provision associated with the resource-based recreational uses and campgrounds in the zoning bylaw. 2004-50. In 2019, Grey Highlands Council passed a housekeeping general zoning bylaw amendment, which was bylaw 2019-102, to the comprehensive zoning bylaw, which had the effect of clearly defining resource-based recreational use, recreational and campground uses, and the effect of making resource-based recreation and campground uses or permitted within the open space zone, provided that the application adheres to the provisions implemented by the zoning bylaw. This housekeeping amendment implemented additional provisions that frame in the general requirements for applicants to permit resource-based recreational uses and campground uses, requirements that apply to the subject proposal. It should be noted that the intent behind the bylaw was not to explicitly prohibit resource-based recreational and campground proposals that do not perfectly adhere to the provisions that were implemented by the bylaw to 2019-102. Rather, the intent was to frame in a means of permitting these uses in instances where the given proposal does adhere to the requirements, and to require that applicants for these uses seek relief through amendments in cases where the given proposal does not adhere perfectly to the provisions of the bylaw. Staff would like to make a specific note that the lake carrying capacity study has not been submitted in relation to this proposal. In 2022, a staff report regarding the feasibility of completing a lake carrying capacity studies was presented to council. In summation, the report stated that the lake carrying capacity study refers to a study comprised of various components that would predict the effects of lakeshore development on water quality, fisheries, and wildlife for a particular lake. The purpose of the study is to determine the current state of the lake and establish an upper limit for the future development to ensure the integrity of the lake environment is maintained. The report notes that these studies are intended to be required prior to the expansion of the inland lakes and shoreline designation being approved, rather than for general residential or recreational development. Since the proposal aims to permit a resource-based recreational use on the subject property rather than increase the inland lakes and shorelines designation or the number of lots around Lake Eugenia, the requirement for the lake carrying capacity is not really appropriate for the proposal. And that is all for the background. In terms of the purpose and effect, the purpose and effect of the official plan amendment, OP01-2020, is to provide the following relief. To permit a site-specific provision under the permitted uses of the inland lakes and shoreline designation in section 4.7.1 of the Grey Highlands official plan, which allows the establishment of a resource-based recreational use of a campground/trailer park. The purpose and effect of the zoning bylaw amendment Z08-2020 is to provide the following relief. Notwithstanding section 13 of the Grey Highlands zoning bylaw 2004-50 on land zoned OSXXX, the standard provisions of the bylaw that apply to uses within the open space zone continue to apply, except where they conflict with the provisions of this section. Where there is conflict, the provisions of this section shall prevail. The holding provision from the provincially significant wetland is removed. In terms of permitted uses, limited to tent/trailer campground on the subject lands. A tent/trailer campground is defined as the following: means the use of land for the provision of overnight or short-term accommodation for trailers, motorhomes, and tents, but not mobile homes, and includes services and facilities normally incidental and subordinate to such a use, including washroom and bathing facilities, active and or passive recreational uses, and an entrance kiosk. Short-term accommodation is defined as a building or structure or any part thereof that operates or offers a place of temporary residence, lodging, or occupancy by way of concession, permit, lease, license, rental agreement, or similar commercial arrangement for a period less than 28 consecutive calendar days throughout all or any part of a calendar year. Short-term accommodation does not mean or include a motel, hotel, inn, hospital, commercial resort unit, or institutional use. A trailer, motorhome and tent shall not constitute permanent year-round dwelling and shall not be used for the purpose of a permanent residence. The subject lands cannot be operated or used as a campground without the provision of on-site servicing. The tent/trailer campground will be used from January to December. In terms of the provisions, the minimum required lot area is 4,000 square meters. The minimum setback of a tent/trailer site from the lot line abutting road 8th concession is 2.5 meters. The minimum setback from the lot line abutting road Hawthorne Lane is 2.5 meters. The minimum setback from the lot line abutting Cedars Resort is 2.5 meters. The minimum setback from the lot line abutting residential zones is 2.5 meters. A maximum of 13 tent/trailer sites are permitted within the subject area. Fences with a height of 2 meters are permitted within 3 meters of a street line. The lands are subject to a holding provision. No building or structures may be erected. No building permits may be issued or land be used for the purpose of a tent/trailer campground on the lands subject to the holding provision. The hold may be lifted by council subject to the following conditions being completed. A new drinking well is constructed in accordance with OREG 903, and a small drinking water system will be required in accordance with OREG 319-08 on the subject property. Treatment requirements should be confirmed with the Grey/Bruce Health Unit at the time of implementation to the satisfaction of the municipality of Grey Highlands. Now, in terms of comments received, just scroll back to that. Grey County planning staff have provided an extensive set of comments regarding the proposal. Grey County Planning and Ecology staff have completed an extensive review of the proposed application. Grey County staff believe that the proposed resource-based recreational use is permitted as per the Grey County Inland Lakes and Shoreline policies. It is unclear from the submitted reports, however, whether year-round camping for 13 trailer sites and a cabin was contemplated, and if the site can accommodate the increased use. As such, staff are not supportive of a year-round campground on the subject property and suggest that seasonal camping be considered. Staff are not satisfied with the servicing option study, as it is unclear whether the 4 scenarios presented in option 2 are feasible per the MECP's D54 guidelines and procedure. Staff are also concerned that the existing and ultimately proposed servicing option of hauling sewage off-site and providing portable toilets may not be consistent with the PPS policies, as it remains unclear if site conditions are suitable for the long-term provisions of private servicing with no negative impacts. Staff recommend amendments to the site servicing option study and water servicing option study to ensure that D54 and D55 policies can be adequately addressed. Based on the updated reports, staff recommend that the proposed holding provision be amended to reference the preferred site servicing option. Staff are concerned that the proposed development has not adequately addressed potential nitrate and phosphorus loading. As such, staff recommend that the servicing options report and environmental study be amended to include such an analysis to address concerns related to water quality and effluent into the lake. County planning staff have recommended that the subject application be deferred until the above information is received, i.e. amendments to the water servicing options report, site servicing options report, and environmental impact study. And county staff concerns are adequately addressed. In terms of Grey Sawmill Conservation Authority, based on GSC's review, the proposal is not within an area regulated by OREG 41-24, nor is it within any natural hazard areas. Therefore, we have no objections to the proposed local official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment. Grey Highlands Building Services have stated the following. Building Services notes that Crozier report identifies 13, this is the site servicing options report, identifies 13 sites and their servicing requirements for disposing of their on-site sewage and water options using onboard sewage tank disposal and Class 1 portable toilets or Class 4 on-site sewage system with the subsurface disposal. I followed up with Wilton Sanitation, and Doug Wilton confirms that Wilton Sanitation does offer onboard trailer wastewater removal at another trailer park on a weekly basis. He reports that trailers typically have a holding capacity of 30 gallons for small trailers and 60 to 80 gallons for large trailers. Parking areas have not been identified on report, but no portion of the septic area shall accommodate parking. All applicable law will need to be met at the time of building permit application. Grey Highlands Transportation Services have stated that there is no proposed access onto a municipally maintained road. No comments or concerns from Transportation Public Services at this time. Grey Highlands Environmental Services have stated that the only comment from Environmental Services is related to waste and recycling collection. The property would not be eligible for curbside collection, so alternative arrangements will be required for waste and recycling. No other comments or concerns from Environmental Services. Members of the public. So comments were received from numerous members of the public regarding the subject applications. These submissions were both in support and opposition to the applications. The comments are extensive and have been attached to the report. In terms of statistics of the comments, we have approximately 11. So this is prior to the report being, or up until the point the report was approved. We had received approximately 10 comments in support of the application and 2 comments in opposition of the application. This morning, we received approximately 7 more opposition comments and approximately 5 more comments for the application. All comments that were received prior to today have been attached to the report, and prior to going to council for approval, the comments that will be received up to that point will be attached to the recommendation to council report. In that sense, I believe that is all. Actually, no, we did receive comments from or some questions from Deputy Mayor Nielsen. I will be speaking to that and also answering those questions, if I may, Chair Allan. So
Sure. I was going to go on to the next point on my script. That's when we would look after that.
Okay.
So I'll go on and I'll call on you and when appropriate. So, okay, thanks for that report. So any comments or questions from council members? Okay, Councillor Dubik.
Thank you, Chair Allan. So maybe just a quick comment. There's so much concern about Lake Eugenia water quality. So I do, like, in the community itself. And so I do appreciate Ernest's comments, as he was presenting. The fact that, there have been some identified gaps in the EIS and service option study about not including the potential nitrate and phosphorus loading. So there are some gaps there. And so for what I'm understanding is that's going to be taken away and addressed. And with regards to the servicing options study, so option 1 about the onboarding sewage tanks and the portable toilets. So as I wrote the report, and I just don't know if either Ernest or planner can just provide some context, but I just want to make sure I do understand sort of the concern, with regards to not necessarily aligned to the PPS requirements, because there's concerns maybe of the quality of the tanks themselves. Maybe there's, leaking or some illegal spillage. It heavily relies on third party for timely pump outs and to regulate the sewage. And so it's not considered suitable for a long-term provision. So maybe that's appropriate question to our planner. Can you provide any more context about sort of how it doesn't align to the PPS or the concerns of the PPS?
For sure.
Nasha.
Thank you, Chair Allan. So the PPS has been amended, or to say it's gone from the provincial policy statement to the provincial planning statement, but the policies within it still are similar or align with the servicing policies beforehand. So section 3.6 of the PPS indicates that servicing for any proposed development requires water and sewage servicing. The preference of the servicing is as follows. So you need to have municipal water and sewage, which is water and sewage provided by the municipality. If that is not allowed, then you have private communal water and sewage systems, which is basically you have one water source for a neighborhood and one sewage source for a neighborhood. And then if that's not available, then you have to provide individual on-site water and sewage services. So individual on-site water and sewage services, as per the PPS, is defined as the following. Just going to pull up that section. So individual on-site sewage means sewage systems as defined in OREG 332-12 under the building code that are owned, operated, and managed by the owner of the property upon which the system is located. So a system that is permitted under the building code is a class 1 system, which is consistent with which is what porta potties are. That's a class 1 system. The proposed option 1, which is a recreational trailer onboard sewage tanks and portable toilets, it's not completely not in line with the PPS, because the portable toilets are consistent with a class 1 sewage system. It's the concept of the portable systems, as well as the fact that there's sewage that's being directly pumped out from or requires a third party to directly pump out the sewage from the porta potties, as well as existing recreational trailers from their gray water and waste and black water tanks. Determining the effect of this servicing on the general environment is very difficult, mainly because you're not really holding the sewage or waste on site. It's being stored within the recreational trailers for however long they're there, and then it's being pumped out on a regular basis, as stated within the comments from our building services, where they actually got in touch with Wilton Sanitation, and they found out that, okay, this is a service that they actually provide, where they regularly come and remove that waste. But in terms of it not meeting the PPS requirement, it's not that it just doesn't completely meet it. It's more of there's pros to it, and as well as there's cons to it, where it doesn't completely align with it, but it somewhat is in alignment with that option. Whereas the applicant has also provided secondary option, which seems like it's completely aligned with the PPS in terms of providing on-site servicing in the form of its own septic system, as well as the water system that is required. However, the risk to the natural environment is a bit more in that regards, because you're holding the waste on site and it's being treated on site essentially, rather than it being pumped out directly from the trailers.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. May I have one more question?
Sure.
Thank you. So the 1 hectare area, so that's less than the zoning bylaw of a minimum of 2 hectares. So that's sort of why it's in front of us. But also wondering, is there any guidance given on like the density or like the number of trailers or lots, you know, that you can fit within like a hectare? I'm just wondering if there was any sort of density of trailer guidelines.
Go ahead, Planner Pasha.
Chair Allan. So the only guideline that we have to go through this is the bylaw amendment that was done to the comprehensive zoning bylaw in terms of the open space zone. When it was done, there was a requirement that went in that stated that you needed to have a minimum of you were permitted to do about 24 campsites within 2 hectares, and that was a limitation. However, there's no necessarily like general guideline to how many campsites you can have on a subject property. It's all based on planning merit and whether or not the use is appropriate for the subject site.
Okay, other questions from members of council? If not, I'll move on to the public. Mayor McQueen.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to continue on with Councillor Dubik's first question about the first report on regards to sewage and holding of sewage in the containers or in the trailers themselves. And it says here about 30 gallons for a small trailer and 60 to 80 gallons for a large trailer. I guess a few questions come to mind is I have some experience with a 5th wheel trailer for about 10 or 12 years, and it doesn't take long filling up your trailer. And I guess the question goes back to where showering is happening, where that's happening, because if you're showering in your trailer, you can fill that tank up pretty quick. And then the part of the water or the portable water that's supplying that trailer. So then, as mentioned in that, it said that that one option is having a sanitary company, as mentioned here. Doug Wilton does it somewhere else. I don't know. In my mind, they're going to be there quite regularly. If you have 2 or 4 people in a trailer over a period of time, it doesn't seem like the right way to go. Like, I would say that in a provincial campground, when you come into a site, you fill up with water, you stay your time, but there are on-site showers or on-site bathrooms. So a lot of times you try not to use your system as less as possible, unless you're, for evening or overnight or something like that. But generally in those provincial campgrounds, you have other places to go. In private campgrounds, they do have hookups where they hook up if they're there for a season or whatever, and then it goes into a system. And it's that. My concern is if you're having somebody coming in and unhooking and hooking all those quite regularly, if anybody's ever done it, you put the pipe on, you suck it out, you take the pipe off. But when you do that in a provincial campground or in another site, there's a wash station that you when you come out, you put the pipe into the holding tank, you drain your tank, but then you hose it off, you clean it up. There's a sanitary portion of that. So I just have concern in the sense of what's being proposed here is I don't know how enjoyable that would be for 13 guests when that particular unit is coming quite regularly, with the tight location that it's at. The other thing, Mr. Chair, is after this amendment or hearing went to the OMB, council, as mentioned by Planner Pasha, did develop a policy on around how to develop campgrounds in Grey Highlands. I think it's been pointed out that Grey Highlands accommodations is something that is of need, but I think the minimum size was a 2 hectare parcel would be the requirement, and we know this is much smaller than that, and so there was I understand that this is amending that policy that was developed after this particular file had been appealed, and a number of points were raised. I'll maybe leave my comments to there now. I've seen this file for quite a long time on different councils, going back at least three councils past. I don't know if others are familiar with the history here, but I know that there is, I think in my mind, there is a concern with the option of dealing with the sewage, and I'll leave it at that, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. If there's no other questions from council, I'll move on to the public. Okay, Councillor Allwood, if you want to speak, can you raise your virtual hand so I can see ahead of time, please?
Sure. Sorry about that. I was searching for the button. Not only just the sewage servicing, but the Ministry of the Environment and Conservation Parks has requirements for water supply too, right? So the D5-5 requirement doesn't seem to be met by what they're proposing. I wondered if anybody wanted to comment on that. Thank you.
I thought they were drilling a well and putting in a small water system treatment. Isn't that what was reported? Ernest?
Yeah. We are aware about D5-3 and D5-4 guideline. But regarding that, the engineer consultant would be the professional about septic system. So we are relaying those comments from the county staff to the consulting engineer for additional comments that will be made available to the staff and county review, and also the council will be available to review that prior to the upcoming meeting for decision later on.
Okay.
Just to follow up, if I may, Chair Allan. I mean, I didn't hear the answer with regard to water servicing. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
No. So I thought it was reported earlier in the, I'm not sure which, whether it was our planner or Ernest, that there was going to be a well drilled and a small drinking water treatment put on. So Planner Pasha?
Thank you, Chair. So as part of the OMB hearing, another thing that was brought up was the fact that there was water being supplied to the property that wasn't consistent with the definition of providing on-site water servicing. The water was coming from the next door side, which is also owned by the applicant. And basically to rectify that, the proposal, as per within the bylaw, there's going to be a holding provision on the property that will prevent the use of the campground until the water servicing is in place for the subject property. That meets all the required guidelines under the MEC.
Yes. Okay. All right. Okay. I'm going to move on to the public. Any person present wishing to object to or support the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and or proposed county, sorry. Now I've got county official plan in my script here. Any person present wishing to object to or support the proposed zoning bylaw amendment or the proposed official plan amendment or have any comments or questions, please indicate and state your name and address. Okay, members of the public, Matthew first. And please state your, well, we know your name, but state your name and your address, please.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me? I see a
Yes,
nodding
we
head.
can.
Great, thank you. Hi, my name is Matthew Arnold and I live at 124 Lakeshore Boulevard. My substantive comments will be brief, but first I'd like to commend council and staff for their endurance tonight. Thank you for your commitment. This is quite something to see. I object to the application submitted by Hawthorne Cottages. I know there's quite a history with this applicant, which Mayor McQueen alluded to. I'm of the view that the proposed campground could have significant environmental implications, particularly given their plan for manual sanitary and sewage services. It's incredible to me that porta potties are called sewage systems. I note that Mr. Young didn't address the sanitary and sewage services at all during their presentation, so they clearly understand that this is an issue and wanted to not address it. The need for regular manual maintenance of sanitary and sewage services, given the current lack of regulation and oversight over septic services in the municipality, seemed problematic to me, especially given that the owners did not carry out the required environmental studies the first time they applied for a campground, which demonstrate that they do not take this issue seriously. Environmental studies, including an environmental impact studies, were not submitted the first time around. I also really worry that the adjacent property is owned by them and is right on the lake. Frankly, I lost track of what Planner Pasha was saying a very short time into his presentation, and I really don't know how anyone in the public can keep track of the various requirements and how those were addressed, which is problematic to me. Given the current concerns relating to the health of Lake Eugenia as raised by the Friends of Lake Eugenia and the Lake Eugenia Property Owners Association, I don't believe that additional development and a very questionable approach to sewage maintenance for that development that is so proximate to Lake Eugenia is appropriate at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And next we have the phone number, whoever that is that Sharon?
Yes, this is Sharon Wickens, 194446 Gray Road 13. Can you hear me?
Can you speak up just a little bit, please, Sharon?
Yes, I'll dip my yelling at the kid's voice. So, committee members, I am writing you to support the plan of returning this property to its previous use as a tent trailer recreational use of this property. When Brian and Jane Legree purchased this property, they seen the potential of this property, of once again being a place for tourism to return. Their plan would see children running around, being with their parents, sitting around their tent, having fun time together, enjoying the great fresh outdoor breezes. This plan would take lots of challenging work, ensuring that each part of this property was once again as a campground to be presentable to everyone. They haven't invested their money with the hopes that their return in their investment would allow them to show a positive income return. But as time has gone by, and being unable to get revenue from their investment plan, thus has made it difficult to continue to pay out with no return. Brian and Jane Legree have made every effort to ensure that each and every area, such as water, soil, wind, wildlife, birds, and humans, are protected in every way possible. They have upgraded and installed to ensure the property is up to code. In all their efforts, they have done more to protect, preserve this property than many residential taxpayers have done. Their plan of which we have already implemented is in process. It's remarkably effective and safe. The possibility of an ecological disaster has been minimized. Way to go. I remember back in the late 90s, my husband and I took our small children to Hawthorns to camp on this very property. We weren't far from home, but we couldn't afford much, and it was close there. And yes, we did go fishing in that, but it was a campground at that time. But I am really concerned and shocked that the municipality of Grey Highlands ordered so many tests for Brian and Jane to complete. Their vision has been put under so much pressure to accommodate each and every study, all of which have passed, has brought undue physical, psychological, and financial hardships. Each time each study test was completed, another study was requested. Does every taxpayer have to do this, or is it only specific people? Nothing was done when their next-door neighbor dug a 3-foot trench width and the length from their home to the water's edge of Lake Eugenia, which was left for months, allowing uncontrolled groundwater to wash down the trench into the lake. Once again, the neighbor was not spoken to or advised by the municipality Grey Highlands staff. Back in 2019, our friends had a buck and doe, and at that time, it was in Feversham. Members and visitors
Sharon, sorry to interrupt, but we've got quite a few people that want to speak. Can you just get to the planning points and not, not the personal experiences?
I should be allowed to have the same as everybody else and every other planner. I'm sorry the meeting's gone long, but this is part of our tourism economic development area. Yes, they have issues in that, but I'm sure there's many long-term, short-term rentals around Lake Eugenia and the municipality that haven't had their sewers or their septics inspected, but they're still having great numbers of people use it for great lengths of time. We need to make sure that we consider all factors for people to come to Grey Highlands, and tourism is one of those that we have not been able to accommodate. There is no place, or very little places in Grey Highlands to come and have it park their trailer. There's many people that is their home away from home, but they have to go outside of our municipality to find a place. Mayford, Thornbury, Dundalk, West Grey, Owen Sound. We should be allowed to have places for people to come which will spend money, promote businesses in our community, and ensure that all people are getting a nice visit, and we do have a nice place here that we have thought. We need to make sure that we are looking after it. In conclusion, if everybody in our municipality did all the work that Brian and James agree have done, then our plan to protect and preserve our beautiful heritage would be so appreciated for the next generations. Please give this permission for this property to return to its original space as an area for the people to use as a campground. Let us all support tourism so that it can be positive, productive, and enjoyable for people to feel welcome coming to our community, exploring, engaging, and enjoying our beautiful part of the municipality of Grey Highlands, Grey County. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those comments, and we'll go to Gary next.
Good evening, Chair Allan, councillors, Planner Pasha. Can you hear me okay?
Great. Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm going to read through. I'm a resident of 128 Cedars Resort Road. I've lived here for 13 years now. I'm here to speak to you today to urge council to not allow this development to proceed. This site was the subject of an LPAD hearing in 2018 that you're aware of. The municipality spent over $35,000 of taxpayer funds and legal fees, plus countless staff hours to uphold council's decision to not allow this development in a residential neighborhood. The Lake Association of Residents spent over $41,000 at the same hearing to defend the position. The facts have not changed. The proposed official plan amendment should not be permitted as, one, the use is not consistent with a resource-based activity. A resource-based activity is defined by its nature of its location. The proposed campground is on a separate lot that does not have access to the water. If this application is approved, the campground would access the water via Hawthorne's cottage property, a separate piece of property with different zoning. My question is, what happens if the lakefront property is sold? We would be left with a campground without access to water or services, as the 0.36 hectare proposed site has no services of its own or access to Lake Eugenia. Just an information point, the planner's report states incorrectly that the site is 1 hectare. It's actually 0.36 hectares, as is explained in the Hutchinson environmental report. Next point, number 2, is Grey Highlands bylaw 2019-102 that was passed to allow for operations such as this is very clear in its requirements. Firstly, it states a minimum of 2 hectares for a campground. This site is 0.36 hectares. Once setbacks are applied, the site has 0.17 of a hectare, a fraction of the required size. As this is the first application of the bylaw, an exception such as this would set precedent moving forward. Thirdly, the site servicing study. Site servicing is still being proposed to utilize the holding tanks and the trailers. The Crozer site servicing report clearly states that each trailer will produce between 275 and 425 liters per day of wastewater. Trailer holding tanks range between 100 and 400 liters, and as far as I've seen, tents never have holding tanks. This would effectively mean that Wilton's would need to service the site on a daily or at best every other day basis. The Crozier report also recommends utilizing the well from the cottage property to service the site. According to the MOE and OBC, a commercial well cannot have more than 8 connections and cannot traverse property lines or roadways. The proposed application would effectively add the equivalent of 13 residences on a 0.36 hectare lot. As I'm sure you are aware, I investigated purchasing this property in 2011. I received in writing that a campground would not be permitted on the site. Could anyone there please confirm that the Legrees were told this prior to purchasing? I have the letter from Grey Highlands, and I'm sure it would have been sent out to them at the same time. In closing, just a couple of things that I did notice in the planner's report that weren't quite correct. The report states that the trailer park would operate from January to December, which would make it a year-round report. I believe it's only looking for a seasonal. I already mentioned about the 1 hectare versus a 0.36 hectare. And the planner also states that this was historically used for the purpose. This is incorrect, as it was never a legal use, and prior to the Legrees purchasing the cottage site and the open space site, the business had not been operated for several years. The last business statements filed for the business prior to 2012 was 2007. In closing, there's a definite need for this kind of business in Grey Highlands. However, in a residential neighborhood on a lot that has no services and potentially no lake access, this is not the appropriate location. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Planner Pasha, just want to confirm, I just looked up on Grey County maps and I clicked on the property and it says it's 0.93. Is that, it doesn't say whether it's hectares or acres. Can you just confirm the size of the property, please?
Thank you, Chair Allan. So yeah, that's a typo on my end. It's not 1 hectare, it's 1 acre in total. So the subject property is 105 Hawthorne Lane, which is 0.93 meters. And there is an abutting property to the southeast of the subject lands that is also merged with the subject lands as well, which is 0.07 acres. So in total, the total property size is 1 acre, and that equals to 0.4 hectares.
Okay, all right, just wanted to get that cleared up. Okay, next person is Robert.
There we go. Councillor Allan, you can hear me now, can you?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. I'm Robert Goodwin. I'm at 137 McDonald Road in Eugenia on the lake. I am the president of the Lake Eugenia Property Owners Association, and I speak to you this evening on behalf of our membership. As many of you know, LAPOA's mandate is to protect the health and water quality of Lake Eugenia. We are against the proposed development of a campsite on the subject property, as we believe the development has the potential to negatively impact the lake health, something that has been under stress as of late. We also believe that the official plan and the comprehensive zoning bylaw are there to provide thoughtful and reasonable controls over development, and these requests for what we would consider to be major amendments should be rejected. The request for council to accept an amendment to permit the development on land less than 20% of the bylaw minimum seems completely unreasonable to us, and we worry that it would be precedent setting for future applicants who would seek to overdevelop lands adjacent to the lake. And I am pleased that we have clarified the size of property is approximately 20% of the current bylaw minimum. We're also concerned that while the planning justification report appears to rely on lake access through the property at 106 Hawthorne Lane, the environmental study goes to some lengths to note that the subject property at 105 is at least 75 meters away from the lakeshore and wetland. It doesn't seem reasonable to us that anyone should be permitted to depend on the adjacent property to connect the property with the lake and the resource at the heart of the application, while also using that same property as a buffer to potential environmental impacts. We also find it extremely discouraging that the use of portable toilets would be proposed as part of a permanent solution to the management of human waste, when in our opinion, the use of those is generally accepted to be focused on short-term temporary use or use in remote applications. Given the request for an amendment to the official plan, an amendment to the zoning bylaw, coupled with the significant amendments to the property setbacks and fencing requirements, we would request that the application be denied. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. And we'll go to Peter now. Need to unmute, Peter.
Seems like I was muted.
There we
can
go.
You hear? Can you?
Yep.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Did you hear any of my prior?
Nothing.
Okay, I apologize. My name is Peter Vincent. I've been a property owner at 105 Island View Drive since 1969, and I'm one of the old timers. I echo the points raised by the Lake Association. I'm also a director of the Lake Association, but in addition to that, I'm the president of the Sunset Shores Property Owners Association, and I am directly affected by Hawthorne cottages. For whatever reason, and I've written a letter to Mayor McQueen and Sean, who's in charge of garbage, to protest the fact that at the moment, all of Hawthorne's garbage is exported to Sunset Shores to two big bins right into the middle, right across the causeway into the middle of Sunset Shores and the corner of the McDonald Farm Association, of which I was also director. If this is approved, you'll be adding 13 more families worth of garbage that will be exported to us, and I highly object to it. And the letter I wrote to Mayor McQueen and Sean has not even been responded to. I'd also like to raise the point shown in the presentation by the applicant. He states that there are several points of access to Lake Eugenia where his 13 families would perhaps like to put boats in the water. I'd like to correct that. There is only one point, the public beach at the far end of the lake, furthest away from Hawthorne Cottages. There aren't several. One used to be in Sunset Shores, but it is being closed. He also, I was surprised to see that he talks about the lake access as a whole, because because they're 75 meters away. I thought that they weren't going to be particularly pushing the point that they're going to add 13 more families to the lake. The lake is already overburdened. There may not be sufficient capacity left in the lake for another 13 households. And I completely feel that this is overdevelopment. And then he mentions that he's going to use the toilets of his neighboring property, that Hawthorne, except for the fact that nobody's looked into the fact that that small septic tank that's on the Hawthorne property itself, not this one, but on the is already overburdened. And will it support another 13 families' affluence? I think this is just ridiculous. With the setbacks properly applied, you couldn't put 13 trailers there. You might put 2 or 3, and even that would be 2 or 3 more than they should have. So please accept my comments. And Mayor McQueen, please do something about the garbage that's being dumped in the middle of Sunset Shores. Thank you.
Great, thank you for those comments, and we'll go to Barbara.
I'm at 135 McDonald Road. My family has owned property on Lake Eugenia since the 60s. I'd like to address the narrative about how this campground was in the presentation, that it was a campground in the 60s. We used to stay at Hawthorne's. My parents were quite good friends with Bill and Maisie Hawthorne, them all being from Scotland together. I used to play in that field, and I can tell you there were a handful of tents on a long weekend, but that was it. We used to get into a lot of mischief in that field, mischief we would not have got into under the bemused gaze of 13 RVs. So just clear that up. The other piece I wanted to mention was in one of the earlier files, the planner mentioned hoping for some wiggle room for their request. I'm familiar with the concept of wiggle room, and it's often appropriate. What this application is asking for is vastly more than wiggle room in terms of what is asked for versus what is allowed. It's been alluded to before, but it just seems bizarre to me that you could shoehorn 13 campsites in, go at 20% of the allowable and reduce the setbacks and increase the fence height just because of an emotional reason that the owners have, who I'm doubtless are wonderful people and do a wonderful job. But because they want this, just because they want it doesn't mean to say that it makes any sense. So I add my comments against the proposal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm not seeing any more hands up from the public. I'll give one last call. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody that hasn't spoken already. Okay, so any clarification questions from council? Okay, I'm not seeing anything. Councillor Dubik.
Sorry, thank you. Maybe just a quick comment, about the lake carrying capacity study. So I appreciate the fact that, the intention of that is about expanding the inland lakes and shoreline designation. But I do feel if we continue to densify, it sort of still has the same impact. So I'm just going to leave that as a comment, given the fact that it was brought up. Thank you.
Okay, Mayor McQueen, a question for clarification?
Well, a question of clarity, and Peter Benson did bring up an email that was sent to me and his concerns about an additional garbage from these 13 campsites. But I did find the email. It was addressed to Sean. Maybe it was copied. I just responded to him and I forwarded to our director of environmental services. So just a loop on that one. Thank you.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So as there's no further discussion, these applications will be forwarded to a future council council meeting for
Chair
further
Allan?
consideration. Yes.
Chair Allan, sorry to interrupt you. Before you started in there, Planner Pasha had his hand up just to add one thing.
I
Apologies.
saw his hand, but I wanted to finish my little blurb. I won't
sorry.
Adjourn until I get to him.
My
Planner
bad.
Pasha.
I thought you didn't see him. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry about that. I wanted to bring up some questions brought up by Deputy Mayor Nielsen.
Yes, he is in attendance.
It's just that those weren't asked, and we wanted to make sure those were addressed during the meeting.
Does the deputy mayor want to ask them? He's here.
Good evening, Chair Allan. Sorry about if I get my camera working right now. Was just finishing up another meeting and surprised to see that we're still going tonight. I did have 3 questions. I don't know if those questions were brought up by other members of the public or anything. I just recently joined the meeting, so I will leave that to Planner Pasha if he's able to just answer the questions I had sent in earlier. If they have been already asked of the public, then that's fine. They don't need to be asked again. If they haven't been, then if they can be clarified, that'd be appreciated.
Okay, Planner Pasha, I think some of the things were answered.
I believe some of them were, but not in full. So I'll just go over them real quickly. So the first question that was asked was nearby cabins on 12B that were recently zoned called for a short-term season of operation being April to October. I think something similar to prevent year-round use. This application is calling from January to December. Why the difference? I realize a cabin could become a year-round living easier than a trailer. However, as we go down tiny home, mobile modular zoning changes, could there be concerns of trailers being used as a year-round residence? So in terms of this answer, the proposed draft bylaw attached to the application is one that the applicant has proposed. Within the permitted uses section of the draft bylaw, the recreational trailers are stated to be used in short-term accommodation rather than year-round dwelling. This means that they can't be used as a year-round dwelling. The draft bylaw also contains wording which states a trailer, motorhome, and tent shall not constitute permanent year-round dwelling and shall not be used for the purpose of the permanent residence. This provision effectively gives us grounds to enforce any bylaw infractions related to trailers staying on the property for a period greater than 28 days. Furthermore, the draft bylaw is what the applicant has requested, but it does not necessarily have to be the recommendation within the final approval by the council. Planning staff may recommend a smaller time frame, for example, January to April, to address council, public, and planning concerns. The second question that was created is that the campground bylaw that council passed had specific setbacks so that any campground would have less impacts on neighboring properties, noise, lights, fire risks, smells, etc. This plan is calling for 2.5 meter setbacks. Can you help me understand why that would be sufficient when there are many residential properties surrounding the site? So in this case, the subject property is abutting only a single residential property to the south. It abuts 8th concession to the north, Cedars Resort to the east, Hawthorne Lane to the west, and is screened by a row of trees. And considering the 2.5 meter setback from the lot line, the applicant's agent reviewed the setback requirements for the placement of temporary recreational vehicles on the subject property, as well as the setback requirements to the residential shoreline zone provisions for the surrounding land use. They have stated the following within their justification report. The main intention of section 13.4C2, 4, and 5 is to provide sufficient setback from surrounding properties to reduce interference and to avoid potential land use conflict. As stated in the previous sections, the boundary of the property is surrounded by dense vegetation and fences to be renovated, and no new physical structures are being proposed within 2.5 meters of a public street or residential property. Therefore, the traffic in the public street will not be affected by the reduction in setback. The abutting neighbors are aware of proposed development and pose no concerns to the reduction in setback. And the question 3 was, will the proponent be required to register as a short-term accommodation within the STA bylaw? This would give the 3 strikes, you're out if the campground becomes unruly. And the answer to that is the proponent will not be required to register as an STA within the STA bylaw. If there are issues or bylaw infractions on the subject lands, they will be addressed through the recommended site specific provisions on the subject property, which is through the draft bylaw, and as well as regulatory bylaws of the municipality, such as the noise bylaw and the property standards bylaw. And I believe those were the 3 questions.
Any follow-up, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Chair Allan. Just one follow-up to the STA question at the end. So if we put the STA applications in our bylaws in place, because we had situations where specific sites were being consistently used and were negatively affecting the neighbors, be it the noise or number of people and such. So if the campground has the regular bylaws in place, be it the noise bylaw for 11 o'clock or something, that doesn't give council the same ability to shut down the business. Like the short-term accommodation allows us to not license and approve if somebody is continuing to abuse the bylaws in place. So I'm just wondering, with the noise bylaw and such, once zoning is approved, there's no method for really terminating the actions of the campground because it's a zoning, it's allowed to the property itself. So it's just more of a comment, I guess, in terms of if things become a challenge in the community there. So I'm just more of a comment, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mayor McQueen, is that a follow-up to Deputy Mayor's?
No, just 3 general comments that I would like to make.
Well, I'm not sure if we need more, need more comments. If it's a question for...
I guess we do have the applicant's planner here to maybe take some questions as well, but I'll be very brief if you allow me to be very brief. One is the county has pointed out that there's concern around the septic servicing provisions. Number 2, this council or this municipality has put a campground policy in place. And number 3, there is concern around the lake, and we are moving forward with a committee to move forward with the concerns that are being raised there. And I think that's being, those are just 3 points that I think that sort of, with this application that's in front of us does sort of, hit on 3 points. I just wanted to make that comment.
Okay. All right. So I've read that last line, that since there's no further discussion, these applications will be forwarded to a future council meeting for further consideration. So it's been a long night, almost 4 hours. Thank you, everybody, staff and council and the public. The public has even hung in right to the very end here. So, okay, thank you. I'm going to declare this meeting adjourned.